subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Synopsis. One day, a boy with white hair and blue eyes was brought to the Uchiha clan. His appearance was so different from the other clan members that he was ridiculed as an illegitimate child. His mesmerizing eyes, known as the Six Eyes, and his innate limitless abilities, combined with the Uchiha bloodline, allowed him to quickly rise to become the strongest. A few years later, he led the Uchiha Clan to the pinnacle of Konoha and even the ninja world, revitalizing the Uchiha Clan. 1. Uchiha Shintaro, have you heard? Shimizu returned to the village with the illegitimate child he had with a foreign woman. He's really tainted the Uchiha bloodline. It seems to be just ahead. The two men were talking and looking ahead as they walked forward. In front of them, a black-haired man in civilian clothes was limping towards the Uchiha station. Next to him was a white-haired child. The two men, about 20 or 30 meters behind the older and younger person, muttered in low voices. An illegitimate child. He didn't even inherit the Uchiha's black hair. At this moment, the white-haired child in front silently turned around. The two men behind were startled. This child, so sharp. This white-haired child had striking white hair along with white eyelashes and eyebrows above his eyes. He also had a pair of bright blue eyes as bright as stars. The pair of big eyes stared at the two men, making it seem as if their thoughts were laid bare. The child turned back and continued holding his father's hand until they reached the Uchiha clan residence. It was just a coincidence. How could a little child find the two of us? Feeling humiliated, the two men defended themselves and left angrily. What's wrong? Shintaro. Uchiha Shimizu lowered his head and saw his son's earlier actions and asked. The child named Uchiha Shintaro looked up, smiled, and shook his head. It's nothing, father. Shimizu nodded slightly. He knew that his son had been precocious since he was young, so he didn't ask too much. The two people, one big and one small, arrived at the clan leader's house under the strange gazes of many Uchiha clan members. After waiting at the door for a while, the door opened and they both entered and went into the large house. Patriarch. Shimizu held Shintaro's hand and bowed respectfully at 90 degrees. The young man in front of him sighed and helped the two of them up. Just call me Fugaku. After all, you are my senior. Uchiha Fugaku then invited the two to sit down and asked, how have you been these past few years? Shimizu coughed, and Shintaro stood up and patted his father's back, trying to ease his pain. When I left the Uchiha clan and Konoha, everyone was very unhappy. If my wife hadn't died of illness and I were not about to die myself, I wouldn't have come to beg you. Fugaku glanced at the white-haired boy behind Shimizu and had already guessed in his mind. It's because of the child. Shimizu pulled Shintaro to his side and said sincerely, when my family expelled me from the house, I left Konoha in anger. Because of my family, I wasn't classified as a traitor by the village, so I still feel guilty towards my family. I don't expect my family to forgive me. I just want them to accept this child. The child is innocent. Fugaku sighed. Oh, why bother? If you had followed the family's instructions to marry the elder's daughter, you wouldn't be in this situation now. Shimizu remained silent. Fugaku had no choice but to compromise and speak again. Well then, what is this child's name? Shintaro, answered the white-haired boy, his eyes very bright. Fugaku nodded. Shintaro, from today onwards, you are a member of the Uchiha clan. How old is he? 5 years old, replied Shintaro. Fugaku looked at Shimizu. I will let the child enter the ninja school, don't worry. Thank you, Patriarch. Shimizu bowed in gratitude. I still kept your house for you, but it hasn't been cleaned for a long time. Thank you. I bid you farewell. Shimizu stood up with difficulty and left with his son's support. Fugaku looked at the two people walking away with a complicated expression. Shimizu and his son came to a somewhat secluded house. Although this place was secluded, it occupied a large area. Besides being a bit dilapidated, it was actually a good place to live. Next to it was the sound of a stream. An occasional bird song could be heard around the forest. Shintaro helped his father onto the bed and let him rest for a while he started cleaning the house alone. At this moment, Shimizu suddenly started coughing violently and then spat out a mouthful of blood. Shintaro immediately put down the broom in his hand, stepped forward, and took out a handkerchief to wipe the corners of Shimizu's mouth. After a while, Shimizu spoke weakly, with a faint smell of blood. "Shintaro, you must become stronger. Only by becoming stronger can you take the initiative in your life in this world. The room on the left is my study. The cabinet at the lower left of the desk contains the gifts I left for you, which can help you become stronger. I am a quiet person and not good at dealing with others. There are only 2 people in this village whom I can call friends. One is Uchiha Fugaku, and the other is Yuhi Shinku. If you encounter problems, go to them. For my sake, they will help you." Shimizu said this for a long time, his tone becoming weaker and weaker, until his breath became fainter and fainter. That night, Uchiha Shimizu died at his home at the age of 25. His funeral was organized by Fugaku, but there were few guests. Besides Fugaku's wife, Uchiha Makoto, there was only one other man. Konoha Jonin Yuhi Shinku. He wore a green Konoha Jounin vest. He looked dusty and seemed to have just arrived from a mission. After a few words with Fugaku and his wife, Shinku came to Shimizu's gravestone. Shintaro knelt in front of the gravestone and paid silent respects, but did not cry or make a fuss, making him seem so mature and heart-wrenching. "Boy!" Shinku patted Shintaro's shoulder. Shintaro turned around and saluted. "Hello, Uncle Shinku." Shinku was slightly surprised. "How did you know I am Yuhi Shinku?" Shintaro explained. "Father said that he only had 2 friends in Konoha, Uncle Fugaku and Uncle Shinku." Shinku looked into Shintaro's blue eyes and said, "Don't worry, boy. I will treat you as my own." Shintaro bowed again. After the funeral, Shintaro returned home. The house had been cleaned inside and out, and the large house seemed very empty with only him living there. The smell of blood in the master bedroom had been washed away by water, and the last trace of his father's presence was gone. Shintaro felt an unprecedented loneliness. He knew that he was not from this world. A while later, he came to his father's study. The bookshelf was filled with various kinds of books. He went straight to the desk his father mentioned, opened the cabinet, and took out a wooden box. Opening the wooden box, there were several books and a piece of plain paper inside. Chakra Extraction Method, Fire Ninjutsu Collection, Water Ninjutsu Collection, Jinjutsu Collection and Experience, Uchiha Clan Ninja Tool Control Techniques, and a chakra test paper. These were the gifts Shimizu left for his son. 2. Transfer student, have you heard? There's a transfer student coming to our class. In the Konoha Ninja School classroom, some well-informed children were loudly discussing the news. In fact, this so-called information was just something they happened to overhear while passing by the teacher's office. "Obito, there's a transfer student. What kind of person is he?" A cute, innocent girl with short brown hair posed this question with an expectant posture. She had 2 streaks of paint on her face, which made her very pretty. In fact, girls are just curious about strange people or things, but boys with budding hearts often find rivals in unexpected places. That person can't compare to my genius, Obito. Rin, just wait until I become Hokage." The girl named Rin was taken aback for a moment. Then she smiled brightly. "Yeah, I'll be waiting." The girl would always take the childish words of that boy seriously. Perhaps this was one of the reasons why she held such an important place in his heart. Not far from there, a masked boy with dead fish eyes and white hair, Hatake Kakashi, crossed his arms over his chest. He looked towards the door, fully aware of the commotion. "I can hear your voices downstairs. That's really inappropriate." Hiroshi Yamashita, a teacher known for his strictness, shouted loudly. The whole place fell silent, but there was still a boy quietly chatting with the girl next to him. The boy was wearing a mesh shirt and a sleeveless jacket. His skin was slightly browner than his peers, but the girl's mind had already wandered far away. "He must be the transfer student my father mentioned." The girl had slightly curly black hair, large eyes, and dazzling red pupils like rubies. These 2 young girls were Saratobi Asuma and Yuhi Kurenai. "Quiet," Hiroshi reminded them again, and Asuma quieted down. He looked at Asuma helplessly and thought. After all, He is the son of the Hokage-sama, so let's give him some face. Asuma's academic performance was considered excellent in the class, but his temperament was a bit childish, or rather, a bit rebellious, and he became a thorn in the class. This was the conclusion Hiroshi had reached after more than 20 years of teaching. Hiroshi looked around. Wherever he looked, no one dared to speak, so he nodded in satisfaction. After all, they're in the advanced class and still have potential. If nothing goes wrong, they will become the pillars of Konoha in the future. He had high hopes for this class. Our class has welcomed a new classmate. Now let the new classmate introduce himself. After Hiroshi finished speaking, he gestured for Shintaro to come to the podium, while he stepped aside. As Shintaro walked to the podium, the students present began to whisper to each other again, especially the girls. Shintaro's outstanding appearance was very captivating to the girls. Shintaro glanced at the audience, his eyes as bright as stars, causing some girls to scream. "My name is Uchiha Shintaro," Shintaro said calmly. "Uchiha? Obito? Aren't all Uchiha supposed to have black hair? Compared to an Uchiha, he looks more like Kakashi." Noara Rin patted Obito and asked softly. Obito blushed at first, then reacted and replied, "Oh, I heard that bastard. Anyway, he's not a pure-blooded Uchiha." He looked at the white-haired boy on the stage again and couldn't help but mutter, "Ha, another white-haired guy." Kakashi, who was being attacked, looked at Obito with some displeasure, then turned his attention to Shintaro. Uchiha, he felt a silent desire to compete in his heart, and he sensed a threat to his genius status from Shintaro. His name is Shintaro. Kurenai confirmed that the boy in front of her was Shintaro, whom her father had told her to treat as a relative. Next to her, Asuma leaned back somewhat sadly. Uchiha or not, the Sarutobi clan is the strongest in Konoha. Asuma's voice was neither soft nor loud, but it reached Shintaro's ears. Shintaro glanced at him, his eyes still calm. Asuma was taken aback by the sharpness of the other party. After all, he didn't speak loudly, and the class couldn't be said to be silent now. However, at this moment, Hiroshi spoke up, breaking the awkward situation. "In addition to your name, you also need to introduce your hobbies and dreams so your classmates can understand you better." Shintaro then continued. He originally planned to face it, but at this moment, some parts of his memory suddenly surfaced in his mind. Shintaro knew that he didn't belong to this world, but he only knew a little about his past life. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it amnesia. And now, because of touching on topics like personal preferences, some memories emerged. I like eating candy and barbecue, fighting, hunting, listening to the shamisen, and I hate drinking. As soon as Shintaro finished speaking, some of the audience burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha ha, his hobbies are so old-fashioned. Even listening to the shamisen, my grandma doesn't even listen to it. Ha 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 ha." The one laughing the loudest was Obito. Hearing Shintaro's old-fashioned hobbies, he couldn't help himself. Some boys also laughed. Asuma mocked Shintaro for pretending to be an adult. "Haha, he still likes fighting and hates drinking. You're still a kid. Why are you pretending?" Kurenai heard the sarcastic remarks around her, but she didn't agree with them because she saw from Shintaro's eyes that he didn't seem to be lying. However, the preferences he mentioned were indeed not like what a child would say, which made Kurenai feel very conflicted, thus arousing strong curiosity. Asuma turned to Kurenai and said, "Kurenai, look at him. He still hates drinking. The laws of Konoha village state that minors are prohibited from drinking. It's too much to pretend to be an adult." Kurenai nodded without knowing why, but in fact, she wasn't listening to what Asuma said at all. Her red eyes were staring at Shintaro on the stage. Asuma felt his cheeks and ears warm, perhaps blushing, and that embarrassing feeling made him very unhappy. This time, Shintaro on the stage spoke again. "Dream is not a dream, but a goal. My goal is to become stronger until I am strong enough to take the initiative in life." This mature statement made some girls scream uncontrollably. Mature, solitary, and handsome men were always popular among schoolgirls. However, there were also those who pondered Shintaro's words. Kakashi murmured the word initiative while thinking, and Kurenai, knowing Shintaro's family background, felt even more sympathetic. A young boy whose parents had died and lived alone in the Uchiha house was not someone passive. 3. Six Eyes Hiroshi was also taken aback by the surprising maturity of the transfer student, but he was well informed and had seen all kinds of students before, so he stepped onto the podium. You can take the empty seat. He pointed to the empty seat in the classroom. The ninja school classroom was equipped with desks and chairs with 3 seats each, and the so-called empty seat was the innermost seat next to Asuma and Kurenai, located on the far right of the second row near the window. Please make way. Asuma didn't respond, silently standing up and moving aside from his position. Kurenai smiled and greeted. Hello, I'm Yuhi Kurenai. Please take care of me in the future. Shintaro showed a clear expression. After all, Yuhi Kurenai and Yuhi Shinku were almost identical father and daughter. Thank you. Shintaro bowed slightly, genuinely expressing his gratitude to the father and daughter. However, Kurenai blushed because of this serious attitude and waved her hand, saying, No need to be so polite. My father asked me to look after you. Shintaro nodded and sat down. When Asuma heard Kurenai's words, he couldn't help but feel jealous. Hiroshi handed Shintaro the textbook, then returned to the podium to start teaching. Today in our history class, we'll talk about the First Ninja World War. It's inevitable in every world, Shintaro said emotionally, opening the book and reading it carefully. Huh? What did you say? Kurenai asked curiously. Shintaro shook his head and said, Nothing. You opened the wrong page. This is the history of Konoha's founding. Kurenai looked at the textbook in front of Shintaro and said. Shintaro saw the Senju and Uchiha family emblems in the textbook and was momentarily lost in thought. Kurenai reached out and helped him turn to the correct page. Shintaro thanked her and took a piece of paper from the book, flipping through it. This harmonious and friendly scene made Asuma clench his fists, touching his head and feeling discomfort, as if wearing something. The class passed quickly, and Shintaro listened attentively. After all, this was the first time he had received systematic knowledge education in this world, so he was still flipping through the book after class ended. His blue eyes quickly scanned the book. History, code texts, chakra extraction, theoretical ninjutsu knowledge. All of it was absorbed into Shintaro's brain like water into a sponge. With his intelligence, it was easy to understand these new things. He had finished reading more than half the book and certainly didn't intend to let it go after class ended. The classroom was very noisy after class, and almost everyone gathered in pairs or threes to chat and play. After all, they were in their first year at ninja school. These boys and girls were half-grown children. Kurenai left her seat to chat with her female friend, Mitarashi Anko. Anko nudged Kurenai with her elbow. Hee, your new desk mate is very handsome. Much more handsome than Asuma, and he suits you better. Anko said this with a knowing smile that only close friends would understand, raising her eyebrows, making Kurenai immediately understand what she meant. What are you talking about? Kurenai patted her shoulder shyly, but Anko kept gossiping. Asuma looked at Shintaro, sitting obediently at his desk, and mocked him as a nerd. The novelty of being a transfer student wasn't comparable to the fun after class ended, so no one bothered him. Shintaro just read quietly for a few minutes. The students in the class left one by one. The next class was combat training, so it had to be held outdoors. Shintaro then put down his textbook, left his seat, and followed the crowd to the training ground. Hiroshi was still the teacher for this class and was already waiting on the field. It's time for class. You're walking too slowly. He was still very strict, so the students hurriedly gathered. When everyone arrived, Hiroshi took out his list and announced, Today's combat training continues. We'll start with Gecko Hate. You can choose your opponent. The winner can continue to choose their opponent. Due to the setting, Gecko Hate and Mitarashi Anko are currently only 2 years old, but they're the same age as Kakashi in the original memory, so I'm ignoring the age-setting bug here. I choose Uchiha Shintaro. Gecko Hate, a sickly-looking boy with dark circles under his eyes, stepped forward and announced his chosen opponent. The atmosphere on the field instantly became lively. Hey, I think the transfer student doesn't know how to fight. Even though Hate always coughs, he's still very strong. Right, the transfer student might be in danger. Shintaro's ears twitched slightly, gathering information about his opponent. It seemed the opponent was considered a strong player in the class. Kurenai couldn't help but worry about Shintaro, her eyes fixed on his back as he walked to the stage. Anko beside her looked like she had been knocked down, while Asuma looked sullen. Shintaro and Hate stood in the middle of the open space in front of everyone. The open space was about 20 meters long and wide, which was more than enough for children to fight. Shintaro clenched his fists, thinking about how to defeat the boy in front of him. You haven't refined chakra, have you? To be fair, I won't use chakra. Hate took the initiative to limit himself. Shintaro refused. It's unfair to you if you don't use chakra. Shintaro's words were understood by Hate as, I don't need chakra to beat you. So Hate didn't hesitate anymore and planned to use his original skills to face the transfer student in front of him. Although in every aspect, he should be stronger than the boy in front of him who didn't even have chakra, Hate felt like he was facing a formidable enemy. The white-haired, blue-eyed boy in front of him always gave an inexplicable sense of oppression. Being able to use chakra actually made Hate feel relieved. Shintaro touched the area around his eyes, and his blue eyes were still clearly visible. All sorts of details from all directions were visible to his eyes. 6 eyes. Shintaro remembered his eyes being called 6 eyes. It seemed these eyes could give him keen insight. These eyes, coupled with the remaining combat experience in his subconscious and the combat awareness in his bones, became the confidence that he, a new student who had only been exposed to chakra for less than 2 days, dared to fight against the strong in the class. Shintaro raised his fists one by one and placed them in front of his forehead and chest. He spread his legs and took a horse stance, staying in the same position to face all changes. However, Hiroshi interrupted his readiness to fight. Shintaro, you need to form the friendship symbol first. Hate raised his right hand, extending his index and middle fingers together, and brought his other fingers together. This was the friendship symbol. Shintaro followed suit and placed his hands to form the friendship symbol. For the power of jujitsu, Hiroshi walked between them, raised his hand above his head, and then waved it down. Begin the match. He then backed out of the field. Hate didn't act rashly. He waited for Shintaro's move. However, Shintaro appeared very calm and maintained his original posture without moving. So Hate chose to act after waiting a few seconds, spreading his legs and charging forward. In Shintaro's field of vision, every movement of Hate was clearly visible. Based on these details, he immediately mapped out the other party's attack route in his mind. Hate rushed forward and launched a straight punch, but Shintaro blocked it with one hand. As I thought, strength is not his strong suit. Shintaro's eyes remained calm. He had already guessed from various signs that the other party's strength wasn't great. After all, the other party was still young and weak, so even though he used a small amount of chakra, he could only achieve the strength of an average adult. Although this strength was greater than Shintaro's current power, it was still within the range where skill could turn the tide. This punch was skillfully deflected by Shintaro, and the fist in front of Hate's eyes quickly grew larger. It was too late for Hate to block it at this point, but fortunately, he reacted quickly and immediately leaned back. Because the downward force was too quick, he had no choice but to extend his hand to support himself on the ground, flipping over 5 times in a row, and then distanced himself. Shintaro sighed in his heart. This body is still too weak. It would be nice if there was cursed energy. At this moment, he remembered that his power in his previous life seemed to come from energy generated from negative emotions. Negative emotions. Shintaro recalled the feeling of sadness he felt alone in the world when his father died a few days ago. A faint blue energy covered his entire body. Is this cursed energy? This familiar feeling must be right. 6 eyes were eyes that could see cursed energy in detail. In Shintaro's view, the composition of this blue energy was clearly analyzed and naturally integrated. Cursed energy reinforced his entire body, causing his aura to suddenly increase. Hate sensed something was wrong, and then used the strongest ninjutsu he mastered, the clone jutsu. Although clone jutsu was just one of the most basic 3 body techniques, It was already considered powerful for first-year ninja school students. Huh, is this a cloning technique? Shintaro tried using 6 eyes to see through the clone jutsu directly, but after all, the product wasn't the correct version, and he couldn't see through chakra directly. However, through the observational power of 6 eyes, Shintaro could immediately distinguish the real body from several details. Hate and his clones attacked together, but Shintaro ignored the clones and attacked directly at the main body. As one of the most basic ninjutsu, the clone technique was naturally recorded in the ninjutsu theory textbooks. Therefore, Shintaro clearly knew that the clones had weaknesses in their attack power. As for more advanced physical clones, Shintaro didn't think the boy in front of him could use them. Bang with a strong and powerful sweep of his leg. Hate was directly swept away by the enormous force. Hate looked confused in the air. What happened? His strength wasn't supposed to be greater than mine now. Hate rolled on the ground several times, but before he could recover, Shintaro had already rushed forward and struck with his palm. He was so scared that he immediately closed his eyes, and the strong wind blew on his neck, but the blow wasn't as heavy as he imagined. He opened his eyes and saw Shintaro extending his hand in front of him, so he grabbed his hand and stood up. "Thank you." Shintaro just smiled slightly and nodded. Shintaro wins and signifies reconciliation, Hiroshi announced. Hate took the initiative to extend his index and middle fingers. Shintaro then roughly understood the gesture and also extended his 2 fingers to link with high eights. It seems ninjas have strong rituals, he thought to himself. After Hate left, he kept glancing back at Shintaro, a normal character, not like an Uchiha. He clenched his right hand and placed it on his lips, coughing softly twice, quietly observing Shintaro's situation among the audience. Wow, the transfer student is amazing. Shintaro's victory made Anko the most excited person. The second loudest voice belonged to Obito. Ha ha ha. As expected of the Uchiha clan, the genius is second only to me. Kurenai's mouth opened slightly, and she couldn't help but cover her surprised expression with her hand. Anko joked again. Your new friend is really great. No one will dare to bully you in the future. You also told me you wanted to take care of him. Who's taking care of whom now? Kurenai blushed upon hearing this and pinched the soft flesh of Anko's arm, making her stifle her laughter and cover her mouth. Asuma crossed his arms and said in a bad tone, I just defeated Hate too. I can do it as well. Anko grabbed Kurenai's arm, stuck her head out, and laughed. Haha, I think you're just jealous. You, Asuma glared at her. Anko was so frightened that she hid behind Kurenai, not forgetting to leave a sentence. The Hokage's son, you can't offend him. Kurenai looked at the very angry Asuma and felt helpless inside. Asuma's character was indeed a bit too impulsive and rebellious. Initially, Kurenai didn't feel anything about it. After all, other students were similar. Even a genius like Kakashi, Kurenai felt Asuma had a childish side like other boys. But Shintaro was different. He was clearly a little younger than Asuma, but he was very mature and didn't seem like a child at all. By comparison, Kurenai became more aware of Asuma's character flaws and even felt a little resentful. Now it's up to you to choose your opponent for the next fight, Hiroshi said to Shintaro. Shintaro looked around with his 6 eyes, and everyone he scanned felt an inexplicable sense of oppression. He was observing everyone's aura and preparing to judge who was the strongest among the present students. As a transfer student, he initially knew nothing about the class's situation. However, after some observation, Shintaro had a general understanding, at least at his level. So he extended his hand and pointed at his opponent. If you want to fight, fight the strongest. The strongest in this class was, of course, Hatake Kakashi, the son of Konoha's White Fang. This title was no worse than the Hokage's son, and Kakashi's reputation as a genius was far more renowned than Asuma's. However, Shintaro didn't judge by name, but by observing physical fitness and a calm aura. Sure enough, he also wants to challenge Kakashi. It seems I have another rival. A boy with a big nose and thick eyebrows with a shiny watermelon head sighed quietly in his heart. Hey Kakashi, you can't be defeated by that transfer student. Even though he's also an Uchiha. It doesn't matter, because only I can defeat you. Rin cheered. I'm sure Kakashi will win. When Obito heard Rin's words, he changed his attitude. Ha! If you lose, you lose. It just embarrasses you in front of Rin. Oh, I won't lose, Kakashi said. 5. Genius Kakashi's white hair fluttered in the wind as he walked to the field with his hands in his pockets. A small group of fans cheered from the audience. On the other side, Shintaro, another handsome white-haired boy, brushed the wind-swept bangs from his eyes with his hand, revealing his beautiful blue eyes. This caused a group of young fans to cheer again. When the first wave of fans screamed, Obito was the most displeased. This kid can't stand seeing Kakashi being the center of attention. During the second wave of cheers, Asuma was the most unhappy. He felt uncomfortable seeing Shintaro for no apparent reason. Perhaps Shintaro's interaction with Kurenai made him feel threatened. Since you're so popular with the girls, then don't compete with me for popularity. Asuma felt a bit comforted thinking this way. It must be said that the children in this world are very precocious, and they have a naive understanding and yearning for love between men and women from an early age. Attracted by the cries of the young fangirls in the audience, many students from other classes gathered, making the game more lively. And Kakashi's reputation as a genius made this ordinary interclass fight somewhat interesting. Both sides formed opposing symbols. This time, Shintaro made the first move. So fast, Kakashi was surprised. It seems he didn't use his full strength in the fight with hate. Bang, bang, bang. Kakashi and Shintaro, running forward, exchanged punches and kicks. They fought several times simultaneously, but Kakashi was at a slight disadvantage. Strength, speed, and even combat experience all surpassed me. Who is he? Kakashi pondered for a moment. Strength and speed are everything, but combat experience. All my fighting skills were personally taught by my father. I can't control as much now. I need to keep my distance and use ninjutsu to win. Kakashi's battle thoughts were very sharp from a young age. After his calm analysis, he found that Shintaro seemed unable to use any ninjutsu, not even the basic three-body technique. This was Kakashi's advantage. Naturally, fighting is about using strengths and avoiding weaknesses, so he found an opportunity to force Shintaro back after the fight, and then decisively distanced himself. Seeing this, Shintaro had already guessed Kakashi's intention, but it was too late. Bang, bang, bang. Several clones appeared on the field simultaneously, but Shintaro had already identified the real one. However, he sensed something was wrong. First, the seals formed were different from the clone technique. Second, the swarming movements of the clones were clearly not a trick. One of the clones rushed forward and punched, and the blowing wind further confirmed Shintaro's suspicion. These kinds of clones have physical bodies. He dodged to the side, but the clones had already surrounded him. As expected, he is the strongest. He is not on the same level as others of the same age. Shintaro assumed a stance and patiently waited for the clones to attack. After all, if he acted rashly, he would easily become passive. However, Kakashi suddenly became alert. He formed a seal with his hands, then knelt on one knee and slapped the ground. Doton, Tsuchinami no Jutsu. With Kakashi's slap, the ground beneath his feet rippled like water in a lake, affecting the opponent's balance by changing the shape of the ground underfoot. Ninjutsu is really interesting. Shintaro laughed from the bottom of his heart. The other party finally let him find the fun in fighting. Kakashi and his clones used chakra to stick to the soles of their feet, successfully stabilizing their bodies under the influence of the waves, and swarmed to attack Shintaro. Now it's very easy. Although you are very strong, you cannot block my attacks when your body is unstable. Kakashi thought he had a chance to win. After all, Shintaro in front of him was already affected by the ground shock and couldn't stay still. However, when he and the clones all rushed forward and were ready to deliver the decisive blow, Shintaro suddenly stood upright and used a sweeping kick to destroy all the clones that did not react, and even the main body was swept away. It's like using jujitsu to deal with this kind of ninjutsu. It seems that these physical clones will disappear after being hit. Shintaro analyzed the information obtained from the previous fight in his mind, and at the same time pursued, not giving Kakashi a chance to breathe. However, Kakashi indeed had a lot of combat experience, perhaps because he had been training with his father since he was young. He turned in the air, completing the cushioning action and landing on the ground as Shintaro rushed towards him, flying with his hands on the ground and kicking the opponent. However, Shintaro reacted quickly, and his hand directly grasped Kakashi's ankle. Kakashi's eyes widened, and he cried out in horror because something was wrong. Shintaro immediately flung Kakashi away, then fell hard to the ground. Bang! Kakashi was beaten, and then he saw a hand resting on his neck. I lost. Kakashi lay on the ground in a large position, unable to accept this reality for a long time, and kept murmuring this word. Shintaro saw Kakashi lying on the ground in a daze, so he withdrew his hand and stood up. Failure is not always a bad thing. Admitting failure can make people grow. He spoke meaningfully, like an old teacher. Kakashi turned slightly and looked at him. Why are you so strong? Shintaro squatted down and looked at Kakashi with his blue eyes. Because I have gone through many experiences. Then he helped him stand up. Kakashi took a deep breath and formed a reconciliation symbol with Shintaro. In Kakashi's view, the so-called many experiences should only be a way to comfort himself. If he lost, he lost. From now on, he would work harder to train and strive to surpass him. Kakashi's mentality was not too bad. Although he was a bit uncomfortable when praised and suddenly fell, he would not be decadent and give up on himself. At this moment, after a long silence, the audience exploded in cheers and shouts that could knock down the entire ninja school. Everyone turned from disbelief to shock, seeing the great excitement. The son of Konoha's White Fang, Hatake Kakashi, the most dazzling genius in the village in recent years, was unexpectedly defeated, and he was defeated by an unknown transfer student. This excitement was too overwhelming and soon spread throughout the ninja school and even Konoha. Is this a battle between geniuses? Sure enough, I'm still too weak. I will work harder. After school today, I will run 500 laps around the playground. If I can't do it, I will do 5,000 push-ups. The bowl-cut boy swore silently. Obito, who was still hoping Kakashi would embarrass himself in front of Rin before the fight started, changed his attitude again. Damn, even Kakashi couldn't beat him. Then my ranking in the class will drop again. Guy and Obito reacted strongly to this battle of geniuses. Even the result of this battle reached the ears of the third Hokage. He defeated Kakashi. His name is Uchiha Shintaro. He is indeed a genius. Unfortunately, he is an Uchiha. The third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, sat in the Hokage office with a pipe in his mouth, shaking his head and blowing a smoke ring, and continued to review documents. Translator's note: damn, the corrupt old man stealing the orphans, Naruto's money is so racist against the Uchiha Clan. 6. Confession after school. Shintaro packed his belongings and prepared to go home. At this moment, Kurenai next to him noticed his movements and reached out to say goodbye. See you tomorrow, Shintaro. All right, see you tomorrow, Kurenai. Kurenai called Shintaro by his first name, not his last name, primarily because there was another Uchiha in the class. Unexpectedly, Shintaro also called Kurenai by her first name, which was considered slightly offensive in the Fire Country's culture. After all, they had just met. Generally, only students who were very close friends disregarded this rule. So, Kurenai blushed upon hearing her name, and Shintaro ran off after teasing her, already far away. In fact, Shintaro wasn't deliberately teasing the girls. There were 2 reasons why he called people by their first names. First, he disliked this rule in his previous life and always called people by their first names regardless of intimacy. On the other hand, Asuma's face turned green with anger. After suppressing his jealousy and rage, Asuma said to Kurenai, "Let me walk you home. It's already late." He seemed determined to compete and called Kurenai by her name. Only then did Kurenai recover. Seeing Asuma's eager eyes, she declined, "No, I'll go back with Anko." After saying that, she found Anko and went home together. "Your new friend is amazing, Kurenai. If you don't like him, why don't you give him to me?" What are you talking about? Is that the type you like? Asuma watched Kurenai and Anko's figures as they laughed and played, then punched the table, hurting his hand and gritting his teeth. The Uchiha station was a place that could be called a village within a village, even having its own walls and gates and its own commercial streets. Shintaro walked among them, relying on the sharp mind brought by his previous life, feeling that the Uchiha clan was somewhat too large for Konoha. In the textbooks, he learned about the village's history and knew that the Uchiha clan was a powerful clan existing since the village's founding. After the Senju clan's decline, it became the largest clan in Konoha. However, such a large family had not produced a single Hokage in Madara, who led Uchiha and Senju to cooperate in building the village, defected. All this was enough to prove that Konoha's top management did not trust the Uchiha clan. Shintaro turned into an alley, still pondering this in his mind. After all, he had become a member of the Uchiha clan. If the Uchiha clan refused, he wouldn't gain any benefits. At this moment, Shintaro noticed something strange, so he looked up and saw that he was surrounded by some children in front and behind him. "Are you that bastard? Your hair is indeed white." "Oomph." Shintaro laughed at himself. "I was so lost in my thoughts that I got surrounded by kids." Sure enough, after becoming a child, I must have been affected, and my perception has dulled. These children seem to be about his age, perhaps 5 or 6-year-old students of the Ninja Academy. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Shintaro was not upset by the other party's insult. "You don't even recognize me? I'm Uchiha Kotetsu." The leading child announced his name. Another somewhat silent child then reported his name, Uchiha Hamasu, Kotetsu's younger brother. The remaining children also reported their names. "So, what are you here for?" Shintaro continued to ask. Kotetsu gave a reason. "I heard you defeated Hatake Kakashi." "Huh, I'm not happy seeing you in the spotlight. We need to teach you a lesson." "So, you're here to fight?" Shintaro said with a smile. Kotetsu said, "Yes, we're here to defeat you." "That will be easy." Shintaro's smile grew brighter. Bang, 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 bang. After more than 10 seconds, Kotetsu and his group were beaten to the ground, unable to fight back. Shintaro piled a few people on top of each other, then sat on them. "You're so weak. Why do you have the guts to come to me and fight?" "I don't understand." He glanced outside the alley and saw after a few seconds a member of the Konoha guard passing by, noticing something unusual in the alley. After taking a closer look, he found Shintaro sitting on other children with bruised and swollen faces. So he quickly came in. "I'm Konoha guard Uchiha Yoshimi. What are you doing? Let them go immediately." The children under Shintaro's guidance were moved to tears when they saw the help coming. Shintaro then obediently stood up. Yoshimi hurriedly helped the children stand up and asked, "What happened? Why are so many of you beaten like this?" Kotetsu trembled and pointed at Shintaro with his finger. Shintaro had no intention of hiding and directly admitted the facts. "They were going to beat me, so I defeated them all before they could." Only then did Yoshimi realize. "So you are Uchiha Shintaro. Come with me. This matter needs to be reported to the clan leader." After a while, at the clan leader's residence, Fugako listened to Yoshimi's report, ignored Kotetsu's crying, and approached Shintaro. "You can't be blamed for this matter. This is an issue of the Uchiha clan. Don't worry, I will have the Uchiha clan accept you." Fugaku turned to Yoshimi and ordered, "Gather all the ninjas of the Uchiha clan and meet at the Nakano shrine before sunset." "Yes." Yoshimi seemed to be Fugaku's loyal subordinate and was very obedient. The Uchiha shrine, known as the Naka Shrine, is located on the outskirts of the village. Although called a shrine, it actually venerates Uchiha ancestors. Shintaro followed Fugaku, stepping over the stairs, passing through the red torii gate symbolizing the shrine. At this moment, the sun was setting and the dim light enveloped the entire shrine, adding a touch of divinity to the already ancient shrine. When they reached the shrine, they saw a statue enshrined in the center of the shrine. The statue wore a Magatama robe, with 2 small braids hanging down on either side of its cheeks. Its appearance no longer visible, but the 3 Magatamas in its eyes were still clear. "That's the ancestor of the Uchiha. No one knows his name, but we still inherit his bloodline," just as you do. Fugaku saw Shintaro looking at the statue and said from the side. Shintaro raised his head and asked, "Are the three Magatamas the highest level of the Sharingan?" He recalled that his father also had a pair of three Magatama Sharingan eyes. Fugaku initially thought Shintaro was paying respects to the ancestor, but didn't expect his focus to be on the Sharingan. He reacted and replied, "Above the three Magatamas, it's called Mangekyo, but it's not something you can touch now." Shintaro nodded and said nothing more. The two waited in silence as the members of the Uchiha clan arrived one after another. Yoshimi came to report, "Patriarch, everyone has been informed except those on missions outside." After Fugaku gave some more instructions, Yoshimi disappeared again, and when he returned, he brought a black robe. At this moment, everyone had arrived. There were more than 200 ninjas of the Uchiha clan, and most of them gathered in this shrine. Shintaro observed the entire place with the six eyes. Essentially, their strength was not weak. At this time, he also found that the bottom of the shrine was hollow, and there should be a dark room. Fugaku spoke loudly. "The reason I called you here today is because of him, Uchiha Shintaro. I want you to acknowledge that Uchiha Shintaro is a member of the Uchiha clan." 7. Recognition at the shrine. There was a commotion among the audience, and some clan members stood up and pointed at Shintaro, shouting, "Why should he, a bastard, be recognized by us? Sit down." Fugaku, who rarely got angry, was now furious. He was only in his 20s now, but he was very powerful and had an aged appearance marked by his tear troughs, making him very intimidating. The clan members closed their mouths and sat down. Fugaku continued, "I don't want to hear the word bastard again. Can you guarantee that there is no foreign blood in your ancestors?" Shintaro's father was indeed expelled from the Uchiha clan, but Shintaro wasn't, so he is still a member of the Uchiha clan. Shintaro's appearance is indeed very unique, with white hair and blue eyes, but the Uchiha bloodline does not lie in that. "Yashimi, your hair isn't black, but brown. Aren't you from the Uchiha clan?" A brown-haired Uchiha ninja below replied, "The patriarch is right." Seeing this, Fugaku continued, "Moreover, Shintaro is a rare genius among us. Today, he defeated the son of White Fang Hatake Sakumo and brought glory to the Uchiha clan. Are you going to expel this genius?" Fugaku's argument and his final rhetorical question silenced the Uchiha clan members. His tone then changed. "All right, this matter is settled. I, representing the Uchiha clan before the Uchiha ancestors, formally accept Shintaro as a member of the Uchiha clan." Fugaku said this while displaying the cloak in his hands. On the back of the cloak was the Uchiha clan's emblem, a flame fan. Then he draped the cloak over Shintaro, and Shintaro remained calm from beginning to end. Fugaku's act of recognizing kin in the shrine was quite exceptional. On one hand, the genius Shintaro was officially included in the Uchiha clan, establishing the patriarch's authority, and at the same time attracting a future strong member to the Uchiha clan. Secondly, it created the impression that Fugaku had brought Shintaro into the Uchiha clan through his own efforts, making him Shintaro's benefactor. If Shintaro were an ordinary child, no matter how talented, he would have been won over by Fugaku due to this. Unfortunately, he was not an ordinary child. Although the memories of his past life had not recovered, he still retained his adult thinking. Shintaro would be grateful to Fugaku, but he would not have unnecessary feelings towards him. This was merely mutually beneficial. He wore the cloak, and the size was just right. "Thank you, Patriarch." Fugaku smiled and patted his shoulder. "From now on, you are a member of the Uchiha clan, revitalizing the glory of the Uchiha clan." Shintaro pretended to be excited and responded, "Yes." Fugaku raised his head with satisfaction and looked at the people in front of him, saying, "Does anyone have any opinions now?" No comments. None. "Very well, Kotetsu. Bring your friends here to apologize to Shintaro." Fugaku raised his hand. Kotetsu, with a bruised face, looked at Shintaro reluctantly, then under Fugaku's authoritative gaze, lowered his head, bowed, and apologized. "Sorry, it was our fault." Shintaro walked over and helped some of them stand up, sincerely saying, It's all right, I've already forgiven you, and besides, I had a problem hitting you. Let's laugh it off and let go of our grudges. We will all be one family from now on. This generous and polite attitude was recognized by most clan members. This kid is quite good. Yeah, defeating White Fong's son shows he's very talented. And he's also humble and considerate. Before, our attitude was too harsh. Even those naughty kids had changed their attitudes toward Shintaro. This guy saved our face, so he's not too bad. Kotetsu sighed in his heart. Hamasu himself was dragged here by his brother. Now that he was forgiven, he sighed in relief, and his attitude towards Shintaro changed significantly. The attitudes of the other children were also very similar, and they were basically impressed by Shintaro's demeanor. Fugaku felt satisfied seeing the scene of brotherhood and respect. Very well, this is the future of the Uchiha clan. From now on, you must live in peace and stop fighting. Shintaro, Kotetsu, and the others lowered their heads obediently to show their compliance. Fugaku then gestured for some people to leave, then faced the entire clan and said, I hope the Uchiha clan can live in harmony. Only in this way can the Uchiha clan become great again. Uchiha clan. Long live the Uchiha clan. Some enthusiastic young people below raised their heads, and then a group of people echoed, and finally, everyone shouted the name of the Uchiha clan. This scene was like a worship ceremony, and the fanatical atmosphere made Shintaro have to pretend to follow the crowd and shout long, live the Uchiha clan. Fugaku finally calmed everyone's emotions and announced the dismissal, specifically keeping Shintaro there. It was my oversight earlier. I didn't realize you were being ostracized by the clan members, but don't worry, this won't happen again in the future. His tone was calm, like a teacher patiently teaching. Shintaro made a very touched expression and choked up as he said, Thank you, Patriarch, for your help. Seeing this, Fugaku added, If you need anything in the future, just tell me, and I will satisfy you if I can. Shintaro then spoke hesitantly. When I was fighting Kakashi, I felt that I didn't know any ninjutsu. Want ninjutsu? No problem. Don't worry. Wait until you refine your chakra and test its nature first. Then I will give you ninjutsu with some efficacy. Fugaku promised. Shintaro returned home, feeling satisfied, and immediately took out a book on chakra extraction methods to continue practicing. He had been exposed to chakra for 2 days, and today was the 3rd day. He hoped to successfully refine it today. Compared to the energy produced by pure negative emotions like cursed energy, chakra is a combination of physical energy and spiritual energy, clearly more difficult to refine. Of course, this is for Shintaro. After all, not everyone has the qualifications to awaken cursed energy. Shintaro closed his eyes, quieted his mind completely, and concentrated on sensing the combination of physical and spiritual energy in his body. After a while, he opened his eyes. It worked. He felt the energy in his body that was completely different from cursed energy. Chakra and cursed energy are easy to distinguish. Chakra is pure neutral energy, while cursed energy is indeed energy drawn from negative emotions. Shintaro took out the chakra test paper and injected a strand of chakra from his body into it, and saw the test paper quickly change. The test paper was divided into 5 parts. 1 burned, 1 split, 1 crumpled, 1 got wet, and another shattered. These 5 areas marked the 5 chakra attributes. Shintaro was a little surprised. After all, he was no longer indifferent to ninja knowledge. The more chakra attributes a ninja has, the more ninjutsu they can use. So he went to see Fugaku the next morning and told him about his 5 attributes. Fugaku was very surprised. Initially, he thought Shintaro had made a mistake. He only accepted the reality after letting Shintaro test it again. At that time, your father was considered a genius when he was born with 2 attributes, fire and water. I didn't expect you to be even better. Don't worry, I'll give you 5 attribute ninjutsu. After receiving Fugaku's answer, Shintaro left the Uchiha clan station satisfied and went to the ninja school. Fugaku watched Shintaro's back and could only sigh, a terrifying talent. 8. A new use for the 6 eyes, a new day and a fresh start. Shintaro came to the ninja school to begin his second day. He did not oppose life at the ninja school. Although his peers seemed somewhat naive, making daily life at the ninja school a bit of a joke, such a learning and cultivation platform was quite appealing to him. Shintaro did not arrive too early, since he also went to see Fugaku in the morning. By the time he arrived in class, most of the students were already there, and most of his classmates focused their attention on him, not on anyone else, just because Shintaro defeated Heir and Kakashi yesterday, and his performance was quite exceptional. Today, Shintaro wore a black jacket with the Uchiha Clan emblem printed on it, and his layers and pants were pristine white. Combined with his white hair and fair skin, it made his overall appearance even fresher and slightly cold. And those blue eyes added a touch of mystery and charm to his demeanor. Shintaro approached Kurenai, greeted her, then flipped the desk and sat in his seat. His handsome and neat behavior again caught the attention of the girls in his class. There were also a few girls who came over to start a conversation, but they were all politely rejected by Shintaro. This action attracted the attention of several other girls sitting there, including Kurenai and Rin. So Asuma and Obito managed to form a united front and cast unfriendly looks at Shintaro. Fortunately, the teachers soon came to class, and the students sat down and formally began the day's teaching. In today's class, Shintaro read all the words in each textbook. Hiroshi was still explaining the will of fire in class. At this moment, Shintaro felt that although classes were still necessary, it would be a waste of time to be confined to the desk like this. So he tried to refine chakra in class. He sat at the desk, his eyes blank, and devoted his entire body to refining the chakra within him. Kurenai next to him noticed that he wasn't moving. Initially, she thought Shintaro was listening to the class very seriously. However, after a while, she realized that Shintaro wasn't listening to the class at all, as her eyes were staring straight ahead. Kurenai looked into Shintaro's empty blue eyes and couldn't help but close her mouth and smile. Turns out a genius can be in a daze too. She then rested her cute, plump cheek on her hand and tilted her head to look at Shintaro. After a while, Shintaro came back to his senses and turned to look at Kurenai. "What's wrong?" "And nothing." Kurenai's face turned red, and she immediately turned her head away. Shintaro then continued his day's practice. Kurenai's actions were quite conspicuous in the class, and familiar snickers were heard from behind her. Kurenai knew it was Anko's voice as soon as she heard it, so she turned around and rolled her eyes at her. Next to her, Asuma clenched his fists and squeezed the book tightly. Hiroshi patted the desk on the podium. No small movements in class. However, the bell had rung at this moment. Hiroshi's greatest strength was that he didn't delay class, so he took his book and left. The next class was a ninjutsu class with a young square-faced teacher named Tanakaichi. So Shintaro stopped refining chakra. Tanakaichi announced that this class was a practice session and the training content was the clone technique. Despite the fact that when Shintaro fought Heir and Kakashi, both used the clone technique and even shadow clone, most students in the class were actually in the stage of practicing the clone technique. Although Heir was sick all day, his strength was ranked in the top 10 in the entire ninja school. Kakashi was the number 1 before being defeated by Shintaro. I will repeat the specific operations of the clone technique again. Now you can practice. If you have any questions, you can ask me. I will select a few people to demonstrate in the last 10 minutes of this class. Following Tanakaichi's instructions, the students began practicing individually. Shintaro was also practicing, and now the chakra in his body was barely enough to use basic ninjutsu, like the clone technique. Unfortunately, it couldn't be used several times, as chakra was limited, and even practicing would consume chakra. At this moment, Shintaro suddenly had an idea that the 6 eyes could control the cursed energy very precisely, so saving the consumption of cursed energy at the peak of his previous life even made the cursed energy almost limitless. So if chakra was injected into the 6 eyes, could it be controlled precisely? Shintaro tried to mobilize the chakra in his body and slowly injected it into his eyes along the meridians in his body. He felt his eyes burning and unconsciously closed them to urinate. After a while, he opened his eyes again and found that his naked eyes could actually see through the chakra in his body, and the ability to see through the cursed energy hadn't disappeared. So from Shintaro's current perspective, a faint cursed energy lingered throughout his body, and there was a bright blue glow of chakra in his abdomen. Shintaro felt happy inside. He didn't expect the effects of these eyes to work in this world too. However, the effects of the chakra on the six eyes were not as significant as imagined, because the six eyes were a product of jujitsu and not chakra. Although chakra was used for blessings, the influence of the six eyes on chakra was much smaller compared to its influence on cursed energy. The difference might be that the six eyes were a passive skill for cursed energy, while for chakra, it was an active skill to buff oneself. And now Shintaro's strength also limited the role of the six eyes. In other words, the six eyes could not increase the total amount of chakra. If the jujitsu or ninjutsu used by Shintaro consumed more cursed energy than the total amount of cursed energy, then even having the six eyes would not help. And he hasn't awakened his inherited technique yet, and just using cursed energy to strengthen his body did not consume much cursed energy, so this wasn't clear. However, ninjutsu was different. Powerful ninjutsu often consumed a lot of chakra, exceeding the range of the current six eyes. Of course, this was only Shintaro's high demand. In fact, for a student of the ninja school, the current chakra combined with the six eyes was enough, and it was already a very strong cheat. Shintaro recalled the details of Tanakaichi's teaching and began to try using the chakra of the six eyes to practice the clone technique. To outsiders, ninjutsu seemed to be released by forming several seals. But in fact, the seals were only the most superficial thing. The essence of ninjutsu was using chakra to transform to achieve various magical effects. The seals were just a tool to help the chakra condense and move. For some experts, simplifying the seals was easy, and some could even release ninjutsu with one hand or even without seals. However, this had nothing to do with Shintaro for the time being. He used the six eyes to observe the flow of chakra in his body, and at the same time formed seals with his hands and began to try the clone technique. 9. New pattern in account 10. The end of the Konoha crane clone technique. Poof, a naked Shintaro appeared beside her. Kurenai blushed, let out a scream, and quickly covered her eyes with her hands. Shintaro withdrew his chakra and dispelled the failed clone technique, leaving behind an apology, sorry. Kurenai peeked through her fingers and saw him continuing to practice as if nothing had happened. She sighed in relief. And Machem, if you don't know, I can teach you. She thought that her clone technique was at least better than Shintaro's naked clone. Shintaro waved his hand and confidently said, "No need, I've already figured out." Kurenai didn't know why, but she instinctively chose to trust his words. Even though she wanted to trust Shintaro, she was still afraid another naked man might appear beside her, so her eyes darted around a bit. Shintaro concentrated, observing his body with his six eyes. He had just identified the problem, a deviation in the chakra flow, causing the clone's form to be incomplete. This time, just focus on the chakra paths, he thought to himself. Shintaro then used his hands to form the seal for the clone technique. The seal was still somewhat unfamiliar, and he formed it step by step. Kurenai looked very concerned about his progress and couldn't help but turn her face toward Shintaro. At the same time, she covered her eyes with her hands, leaving just 2 slits for observation, planning to shut them quickly if she saw something she shouldn't. Clone technique. With a bang, another Shintaro appeared from thin air. The 2 Shintaros looked exactly the same in appearance and demeanor. The 2 Shintaros looked at each other, then at her simultaneously, asking in unison, "How does it look?" After carefully observing, Kurenai replied, "I can't tell the difference, it's amazing." Shintaro then contacted the clone and concluded to himself, "Ordinary people can't see through my clone technique, but the 6 eyes can." This also meant that the current clone technique could be used in real combat. After all, not everyone had the 6 eyes. In fact, there was no second pair of 6 eyes in this world. However, this basic clone technique couldn't be the ultimate in the ninja world, and there were certainly many ways to see through it. Then Shintaro remembered the physical clone technique used by Kakashi in a previous fight. This kind of clone couldn't be distinguished even with the 6 eyes. Only subtle differences could be detected. He sighed at the finesse of this clone technique, regretting that the person who invented this ninjutsu must have been a genius. Maybe I can learn this ninjutsu from Kakashi. Shintaro had just mastered the clone technique and was already yearning for more advanced clone techniques. He was always very greedy in his quest to become stronger. At this moment, Tanakaichi interrupted the students who were practicing, including Shintaro's thoughts. Practice time is over. Now let's start the demonstration session. Kinta, you're up first. A regular-looking boy stepped forward and used the seal to display a decent clone. The clone's appearance was about 80% similar to the original body. At first glance, there was nothing wrong with it, but if he faced an enemy in detail on the battlefield, it wouldn't be enough. So Tanakaichi first affirmed the level of his clone technique, which could be considered very good among ninja students of this age, but then he pointed out its deficiencies in detail. He then asked Kenta to return to his seat, and, after looking at his list, he called the next student to perform on stage. Next, Mike Guy. Sitting in the back row of the classroom, a boy with bowl-cut hair and green tights stood up, a visible nervousness on his face, resembling a student randomly called upon to answer a question unprepared. Some students in the class started talking when they heard it was Guy. Isn't he bad at ninjutsu? Is sensei just setting him up to make a fool of himself? Ha 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 ha, this is going to be good. You can tell from his expression that he doesn't know anything. Shintaro initially didn't care about the students coming on stage to show off, but after hearing these comments, he understood that Guy seemed to be inept. Precisely because of this, he used his 6 eyes to see what was special about this boy named Guy. After all, if he was truly worthless, he wouldn't have entered the ninja school, unless he was someone like Shintaro, who had transferred to another class and didn't even take the entrance exam. What's going on with his meridians? Such a peculiar physique. Chakra circulates through the 8 extraordinary meridians of the human body. This is the most basic ninjutsu knowledge in the textbooks. However, according to the intelligence feedback Shintaro observed after injecting chakra into his 6 eyes, Guy's meridians were very special. Although his meridians were thick and strong, they were almost solid, leaving a very narrow channel for chakra circulation. Meridians are the main channels for transporting chakra. If the meridians of an ordinary person are smooth plastic pipes, then Guy's meridians are like very hard rubber pipes. However, the channel in the middle of this rubber pipe is only 1/10 the size of a regular water pipe. In such a condition, it was at least 10 times more difficult for Guy to practice ninjutsu than an ordinary person, and the inherently narrow chakra channels limited the use of advanced ninjutsu. But this condition wasn't without its advantages. If there was a ninjutsu that could instantly boost chakra, then Guy's meridians could open up instantly, greatly enhancing endurance, making it possible to increase power dozens of times in an instant. However, Shintaro only analyzed this possibility theoretically and still rejected the idea in his heart. Not to mention, if there was any ninjutsu in the ninja world highly suitable for Guy, even if it existed, it would be a closely guarded secret. Guy wasn't a ninja from a prominent clan, so how could he have such an opportunity? So Shintaro expressed his regret for Guy in his heart. He's talented, but it's a pity he will most likely be buried. Guy walked to the podium and formed a seal to perform the clone technique, but in the end, he only had his own clothes. This level of cloning was similar to the naked male clone Shintaro had used the first time. The students in the class laughed one after another. Tanakaichi judged Guy's talent poorly. This kid got into the school purely because of his physical abilities. I can understand that he's bad at ninjutsu, but if he doesn't know any ninjutsu, what's the point of being a ninja? Get down. You need to practice your clone technique well. Seeing Guy nod and walk away, Tanakaichi felt pity for this hard-working student. Kakashi, come and show us. 11. Copy ninja Uchiha Shintaro. Although Kakashi was defeated by Shintaro, it didn't change the fact that he was a genius. In terms of ninjutsu, he was almost a level ahead of his classmates. Even if he were to take the graduation exam now, it wouldn't be a problem. Kakashi stood indifferently. The clone technique was too basic for him. Tanakaichi didn't specify that he had to demonstrate the most basic clone technique, so Kakashi casually showcased the strongest clone technique he had mastered, the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. As a burst of white smoke appeared, Kakashi's clones instantly filled the entire classroom, at least a dozen or 20 of them. The students in the class were all amazed at how powerful this move was, but Kakashi didn't care about their reactions and instead turned to look at Shintaro. Seeing Shintaro's blue eyes fixed on one of the clones, Kakashi thought the other was also stunned by this technique, so he couldn't help but proudly raise the corner of his mouth. The upper limit of the Kagebunshin no Jutsu was much higher than when they had fought, so he felt it was natural for the other to react this way. However, what Kakashi didn't realize was that Shintaro's 6 eyes were glowing slightly, a sign that they were activated. Shintaro used his 6 eyes to carefully observe the chakra flow of the clones, including the chakra flow in Kakashi's body as he formed the seals. The ability of the 6 eyes is to see the details of techniques. After injecting chakra into the 6 eyes, he could also see the chakra flow in detail, and this level of detail was comparable to high-resolution thermal imaging instruments. This allowed Shintaro to directly see the principles and methods of the technique and ninjutsu. Kakashi withdrew his chakra at this moment, and Shintaro thought to himself, "The principle is clear, and I will succeed if I try it a few times." Kakashi didn't know that his special skill was being scrutinized by Shintaro at this moment, so he sat down after receiving endless praise from the teacher. Shintaro was called by the teacher right after Kakashi, and what he demonstrated was not the shadow clone he had just secretly learned, but the most basic clone technique. It wasn't because he wasn't confident in successfully using the shadow clone, but because he intended to keep his abilities hidden. Shintaro sealed the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu he had secretly learned in his heart and didn't intend to reveal it. The level of the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu is not low. He had just joined Konoha. Displaying the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu recklessly would not only raise suspicions, but could also reveal his greatest current reliance, the 6 eyes. Shintaro planned to find a reasonable explanation before revealing the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, such as a training method he obtained from his family, or wait until he awakened to Sharingan. He heard that the Sharingan had the ability to copy ninjutsu, so he could explain that he had learned the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu then. The students in the class also discussed who was more talented, Shintaro or Kakashi. Although Shintaro had defeated Kakashi, this could be attributed to reasons like accidental carelessness, and Kakashi was a veteran genius in the class, and his current ninjutsu skills were higher than Shintaro's, so Kakashi was not at a disadvantage in this confrontation. Fans supporting Shintaro claimed that he was more talented and his learning ability would soon surpass Kakashi. In short, neither side could do anything against the other. Shintaro and Kakashi, the center of this confrontation, claimed they didn't care about this. Talking about victory was meaningless, especially for Shintaro, who didn't care about the blind comparison among children, and even Kakashi didn't care about it. That day's class ended quickly, as the students debating who was more talented, Shintaro or Kakashi, dispersed one by one. Shintaro saw that it was still early and planned to go to Konoha's training ground to observe. This time, copying the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu gave him a clear idea of its benefits. Copying ninjutsu greatly increased his strength. Before Shintaro awakened the curse technique, this ninjutsu would be his foundation for gaining a foothold. There are a total of 44 training grounds in Konoha. Except for the 44th training ground, the others are open to the public year-round. This allowed Shintaro to copy various ninjutsu. At least at this stage, the more ninjutsu he mastered, the better. But as he was packing up and about to leave, Kurenai next to him pulled him back. Shintaro turned around in confusion and saw her smiling shyly. "Come to my house for dinner tonight. My father asked me to bring you after school." Shintaro didn't refuse. After all, Shinku was a friend of his father during his lifetime and one of the few connections he had in this village. "Yes." Hearing his answer, Kurenai said happily, "Great, let's go together." Shintaro nodded. Asuma was already feeling a bit numb. In the presence of the 2 people next to him, he felt like an eyesore. He clenched his fists and ran, catching up with the teacher and shouting, "Sensei, I want to change seats." Poor Asuma chose to escape. Kurenai looked at him, running away in surprise. She didn't know why Asuma reacted so strongly. At this moment, Shintaro interrupted her thoughts. "Which way is your house?" He guessed the reason for Asuma's reaction. It was simply jealousy after seeing the interaction between him and Kurenai. Kurenai came to her senses and then led Shintaro to her home. Her house was in a pretty good location, close to the center of the village. Kurenai opened the door with a key, and they both changed their shoes at the entrance and walked into the house. They saw Shinku sitting at the table wearing a jounin vest, silently observing Shintaro. Kurenai stepped forward and said, "Dad, I brought Shintaro." Seeing his daughter, Shinku nodded and went to the bathroom to wash his hands. "Hello, uncle." Shintaro bowed. Unexpectedly, when he looked up, Shinku, who had been sitting there, had disappeared, replaced by a strange and blurry figure, constantly approaching him, emitting a dangerous aura, as if he would die at its hands in the next second. However, this didn't scare Shintaro. He used his 6 eyes to accurately locate the chakra strands sneaking into his optic nerves and remove them from his body. The illusion was lifted, and Shinku appeared sitting in his original position with a surprised expression on his face. Although this is a low-level illusion technique, it might be a complicated illusion technique difficult for you to master. Unexpectedly, you not only didn't panic, but dispelled it yourself. Shintaro humbly said, "I'm just naturally sensitive to chakra." Shinku sighed. "Your talent is indeed genuine. Even the boy from Tsukumo's family was defeated by you. Having talent in illusions is natural. After all, your father." Although his words were incomplete, Shintaro already knew from his father's illusion experience and Shinku's words that his father had significant achievements in illusions. Perhaps the friendship between these two stemmed from their mutual study of illusions. Illusions are indeed magical. I thought there was no difference from ninjutsu, but now it seems the difference is very clear. Shintaro successfully dispelled the illusion technique with the help of the 6 eyes, and also used these all-seeing eyes to deconstruct the principles of the illusion technique. The effect of this technique is similar to the clone technique, both creating false clones. However, there is a fundamental difference between the two. One is ninjutsu, and the other is illusion. The essence of the clone technique is to use chakra to condense a shell identical to the main body, while the principle of the illusion technique is very different, projecting the user's chakra into the recipient's optic nerves to create the shell. The difference between the two gave Shintaro a basic understanding of the 2 main types of jutsu, ninjutsu and jinjutsu. Combined with his previous life's taijutsu knowledge, Shintaro had glimpsed the ninjutsu and jinjutsu relied upon by ordinary ninjas. This step has also been copied, Shintaro thought to himself. 13. The strongest clan in Konoha. Kurenai walked between the two of them and interrupted the silence. "Dad, is the food ready?" Shinku snapped out of his memories of his old friend and replied, "It's already prepared in the kitchen. Go and bring it." Kurenai obediently went to the kitchen, and Shinku turned to Shintaro and invited him to sit. "Sit down, Shintaro. Make yourself at home. After all, you have no one at home. Come to my house for dinner every night from now on and try my cooking. It'll also make my home more lively." Shintaro politely planned to decline, but Shinku seemed quite insistent, and he couldn't refuse any longer. "Thank you, uncle." Shinku smiled contentedly. "You and Kurenai are the same age. She's less than a year older than you. You two are good friends, so it's convenient for you to study and practice together." Shintaro looked at his thin and serious face, filled with kindness. He obediently nodded to Shinku. Kurenai came out carrying plates of food, large and small. Shintaro immediately stood up, took the plates, and set them on the table, filling it with food. Shinku had a satisfied smile on his lips, then took out chopsticks and handed them to the two of them. The 3 of them sat down and enjoyed the sumptuous meal. While eating, Shinku told Kurenai what he had just told Shintaro, asking them to have dinner together at home in the future and help each other when facing difficulties. Compared to the calm Shintaro, Kurenai's reaction was much more intense. Even her movements while picking vegetables became a bit unnatural. However, she did not refuse. She just kept repeating in her mind that Shintaro was like a younger brother to distract herself from thoughts of a romantic relationship between a man and a woman. After all, her father's words seemed like he had found a husband for her. After the meal, Shintaro took the initiative to stay and help wash the dishes before leaving. By the time he left the Uchiha house, it was already dark. Fortunately, Shintaro had a good memory and had already memorized the route from the Uchiha residence to the Uchiha clan's home. He intended to go straight home, but was stopped by a group of acquaintances along the way. It was Kotetsu and the others. Shintaro initially thought they were there to cause trouble again, but unexpectedly, Kotetsu threw himself at him as soon as he saw him. "Shintaro Aniki, you have to stand up for us. We're being bullied." Kotetsu hugged Shintaro's thigh and cried, very different from his previous attitude. Shintaro, who was slightly germophobic, shook his leg twice to shake off Kotetsu and asked what happened. Hamasu then explained the whole story clearly. It turned out that Kotetsu and the others had planned to find a place to practice after school, but their family's training ground was under repair, so they went to public training ground number 4. They were practicing well, but a group of students from the Hyuga clan liked the spot they were in and wanted them to leave. When they refused, a conflict arose. But it seemed there was a senior member of the Hyuga clan among them, and the others were beaten until they couldn't fight back and were forced to leave in desperation. "Aniki, those Hyuga clan members are too arrogant. They beat us without saying anything and even insulted our reputation as Uchiha, saying that our title as the strongest clan in Konoha is meaningless. Aniki, you have to help us." The others nearby also imitated Kotetsu and called him Aniki, asking Shintaro to step forward and avenge them. Kotetsu lifted his and his younger brother Hamasu's clothes, revealing dense and terrifying red spots. "Shintaro Aniki, this is all because of that senior. It still hurts." Shintaro observed and was surprised. He saw that the acupoints on Kotetsu and Hamasu's bodies were blocked by the residual chakra of someone else. This must be the work of the Hyuga clan. It seems like a taijutsu that uses fingers to concentrate chakra and penetrate the opponent's body to disrupt their chakra. No, it's definitely taijutsu. Shintaro used his 6 eyes to quickly analyze the Hyuga clan's methods, which seemed somewhat intricate. Faced with the requests of several people, he didn't immediately agree. Instead, he first approached Kotetsu and Hamasu, gesturing for them not to move, and injected his chakra into their bodies, expelling the residual Hyuga clan chakra. Both of them immediately felt the blockage in their bodies disappear. Kotetsu sighed. "Aniki can heal." Hamasu, holding back for a long time, finally managed to say, "Thank you, Aniki." Shintaro then responded, "The Hyuga clan is quite capable. I'll help you teach them a lesson, but not now. It's already late. You should go back and rest first. You can take me to settle the score with them after school tomorrow." Hearing that Shintaro agreed to avenge them, Kotetsu and the others were very excited, and after agreeing on the time, they ran off. On the way, Hamasu asked confidently, "Do you think Shintaro Aniki can win?" Kotetsu, changing his previous flattery, showed a cunning look completely different from his younger brother. "My intuition tells me that this guy is stronger than that Hyuga clan member. If he can't even beat a Hyuga clan member, then he doesn't deserve to be our Aniki." Clearly, he was only using the so-called Aniki as a tool for revenge to regain his dignity. On the other hand, Shintaro also saw through the others' cunning. Regardless of whether he could avenge them or not, at least he could fight to a draw with both sides suffering losses. That was Kotetsu's real goal. But Shintaro still agreed. He had heard about the Hyuga clan's reputation, and it seemed they were also a prominent clan in the village, and among them was a senior Hyuga ninja academy student. If he could defeat this Hyuga clan member, it would undoubtedly be the best proof of his strength. Shintaro planned to further showcase his exceptional talent to the clan in exchange for more attention. However, he wasn't ready to fight without preparation. Shintaro went to the clan leader's house. At this moment, Fugaku was sitting in his yard, so Shintaro found him and explained everything about Kotetsu and the others. Seeing that Fugako didn't stop him from causing trouble for the Hyuga clan, Shintaro asked for information about the Hyuga clan. Fugako mainly talked about the two methods of the Hyuga clan, Byakugan and Gentle Fist. As Shintaro had guessed, Gentle Fist was the physical technique that caused the red spots all over Kotetsu and the others. Byakugan became the focus of Shintaro's attention. According to Fugaku, almost every member of the Hyuga clan could master this equally famous ocular technique as the Sharingan. The Byakugan's field of view was nearly 360 degrees, reaching over a kilometer. It could see through all obstacles. Combined with the Gentle Fist's acupoint skills, it was a deadly move. Shintaro knew in his heart that tomorrow's opponent would be somewhat difficult, but he could win. After coming to this conclusion, he left the clan leader's house. After Shintaro left, Fugaka looked at the trees in the yard alone and murmured to himself, "Is this just a conflict among juniors, or is there a directive behind it from the Hyuga clan? The strongest clan in Konoha? Hizashi, do you think this is a good title?" 14. Fighting after school, Shintaro practiced some exercises after returning home and did not sleep until late at night. The next day, he went to ninja school as usual. There was nothing special about school life today. Perhaps the only thing worth mentioning was that Asuma had taken the initiative to request a change of seats, and the person now sitting in that seat was Anko. After school, Kurenai invited him to go home together. Shintaro declined, but asked her to go ahead, saying that he had some things to take care of. Kurenai had no choice but to pull Anko away with her, feeling a bit displeased. What Shintaro had to do, of course, was to settle the conflict with the Hyuga clan member he had promised yesterday. Tetsuo and his group had been waiting at the school gate. They bowed to Shintaro and called him boss from a distance, attracting the attention of passers-by. Once the passers-by saw the Uchiha Clan emblem on the backs of these students, they understood that they were young members of the Uchiha Clan, and their regard for Shintaro rose significantly. He looked like an ordinary handsome guy, but being respectfully called boss by the Uchiha children, who did not look easy to mess with, clearly indicated he was not someone to be trifled with. Just like that, Shintaro's reputation changed from the school's idol to the school bully. "Boss, let's go to the 4th training ground and wait." Yesterday, the Hyuga group said they were interested in the surroundings there, so they will definitely go there today, Tetsuo said as he approached. Shintaro nodded slightly and headed to the 4th training ground under the leadership of several people. He was still unfamiliar with most places in Konoha. After all, he usually traveled between his home and the ninja school, plus the Yuhi family house, 3 points in a line. He usually practiced in the open space next to his house and rarely went to the family training ground, let alone public training grounds. Although training ground number 4 was also on the village's outskirts, it was closer than other training grounds. A few people walked for 10 minutes and reached the place. The training ground was very spacious, and the spot where Tetsuo led Shintaro was in the corner, where many wooden stakes were planted in the ground. The wooden stakes were hollow and full of scars. It was evident that they had been used to practice physical arts for many years. Shintaro walked forward and observed the stakes carefully, finding that the most recent mark on the stakes was a shallow hole the size of a finger. He naturally thought of the injuries to Tetsuo and the others yesterday, as well as the information Fugaku had given him. Gentle Fist. Shintaro identified the name of the attack method. Tetsuo nodded repeatedly. Yes, it's Gentle Fist. At the mention of Gentle Fist, Hamasu beside him unconsciously covered the wounds on his body, as if they still hurt. It was unclear whether it was a psychological effect, or because the Hyuga clan's Gentle Fist was so effective. Shintaro saw Hamasu's reaction and sighed. It's called Gentle Fist, but its power is not gentle at all. It seems today will be interesting. When Tetsuo heard this, he started feeling sad again and cried. Yes, boss, the Hyuga gang is so cruel. They didn't spare us any face. If they don't spare us any face, doesn't that mean they don't spare the boss any face? Upon hearing this, Shintaro waved his hand and said, No need to provoke me. Now that I'm here, I will definitely help you fight. You could be assured of this. Seeing his intention too obvious, Tetsuo had to smile awkwardly and flatter him again. Since the boss says so, we can be assured. The boss is mighty. Hamasu clenched his fist and said, I'll beat you back today. Tetsuo slapped Hamasu's head and said, Forget it, don't go up and embarrass yourself. Hamasu put his hands down sadly, but there was still reluctance in his eyes. Shintaro looked at Tetsuo jokingly. Although this guy was cunning and versatile at a young age, he cared quite a bit for his younger brother. Clearly, Tetsuo didn't want Hamasu to go up and get beaten again, but insensitive Hamasu didn't seem to understand his brother's good intentions. It didn't take long for the awaited people to arrive. A group of boys of different heights, but all with pure white eyes approached. Doesn't the Uchiha clan have a long memory? Or do you want to be beaten again? This is already Hyuga clan territory. Get out of here. A round-faced Hyuga boy shouted arrogantly, completely ignoring the newcomers. But Tetsuo stood up, puffed out his chest, raised his head, and replied, You're the ones who should leave. Today, with boss Shintaro here, you'll be beaten up. Tetsuo's words were strong and scared the round-faced boy for a moment. This time, the tallest Hyuga boy spoke. Is Uchiha Shintaro the one who defeated Hatake Kakashi? Hearing this, Tetsuo became more dominant and proudly said, That's my boss. He looked as if he himself was the one who defeated Kakashi. The tall Hyuga boy said disdainfully, Hatake Kakashi is just a first-year student. How strong can he be? I'm about to become a genin. Why should I be afraid of you? After saying this, he looked at Shintaro provocatively. After all, Shintaro's white hair and blue eyes were so distinctive that he could be recognized at a glance. Shintaro looked calmly at the boy in front of him, unmoved. The tall Hyuga boy felt humiliated, so he said arrogantly, I'll give you a chance. If you, Uchiha Shintaro, lower your head and surrender and give us this place, I can let you go back safely. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude. Shintaro calmly said, You're not worthy. This sentence made Tetsuo and the others excited and also made the Hyuga boys' faces change drastically, as if they had just eaten dirt. Uchiha Shintaro, you're finished. The tall Hyuga boy couldn't accept that the boy in front of him, 3 years younger than himself, dared to act arrogant in front of him. After saying this, he was ready to take action, and the others around him were also ready to move. Tetsuo and the others were initially scared and lost their momentum. The tall Hyuga boy started looking down on the Uchiha clan in front of him and shouted, Hyuga is the strongest clan in Konoha. After saying that, he rushed forward. Shintaro felt bored seeing the unorganized movements, shook his head slightly, channeled his cursed energy throughout his body, jumped, and flew forward with a kick. The tall Hyuga boy hurriedly raised his hands to block, but was still thrown several meters away by the immense force, falling onto the grass in embarrassment. Makoto. The other Hyuga boys lost their leadership in an instant and gathered around Makoto. The tall Hyuga boy named Hyuga Makoto only felt pain in his arm, but the greater pain was his pride. Although the other party didn't slap his face, it was undoubtedly a very hard slap for Makoto, making him so embarrassed in front of so many younger brothers and the Uchiha clan. 15. A crushing defeat. Makoto winced in pain, but he still pushed the people around him away, stood up with difficulty, and moved his still uncontrollable hand. I underestimated you, but you only have brute strength. All of that is useless in front of Byakugan and Gentle Fist, he said harshly. Shintaro ignored his words, but focused on the difference between Hyuga Makoto and the other Hyuga clan members around him. Among those people, only Hyuga Makoto openly displayed his forehead, while the others covered theirs with fabric headbands, scarves, and other accessories. If it were just this, Shintaro wouldn't find anything unusual. However, the six eyes could see something deeper beneath the surface. Behind the covers were certain restrictions imposed on the brains of the Hyuga clan, limiting their vision and abilities. This might be the reason why these people only followed the orders of the main family. These restrictions must be a symbol of status and an embodiment of subservience. However, Shintaro didn't know the specific details. He planned to go back and ask the clan leader. As a high-ranking official in Konoha and the leader of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku should know this well. Makoto recovered his arm as Shintaro studied the mystery of the foreheads of some people. Although it still felt a bit numb and sore when he waved it, it did not affect his basic activities. Makoto formed a seal with his hands. Be a Kugan. Veins appeared around his eyes, and his eyes suddenly became sharper. Shintaro noticed a large amount of chakra from Makoto's body flowing into his eyes, causing an overload around his eyes, resulting in this phenomenon. Compared to the Uchiha Clan's Sharingan, the Hyuga Clan's Byakugan had a much lower usage threshold. Even some ninja school students who hadn't graduated could open it. Makoto even assumed the gentle fist stance. This made Tetsuo and the others, who had been harshly taught with this method, start to feel scared, and they hid behind Shintaro. Makoto sneered, "Hiding is useless. In front of Byakugan, you have nowhere to hide." He lowered his body, put one hand in front and the other behind, and assumed the gentle fist stance. Jukin. Makoto's aura suddenly changed, making Shintaro feel wary. The two were at a stalemate for a moment, and soon Makoto couldn't resist taking action first. He stepped forward methodically and attacked quickly with 2 palm strikes. Makoto continued to pursue. 4 strikes, 8 strikes, 16 strikes, 32 strikes. After completing 32 strikes, he was panting and physically exhausted. However, Shintaro looked relaxed and comfortable, as if he had just taken a leisurely walk. But in his heart, he still admired the Hyuga Clan's gentle fist. He believed that a great clan passed down for many years indeed had its own foundation. Shintaro imitated Makoto and concentrated chakra at his fingertips. Then he immediately took action and directed his finger at the acupuncture point on Makoto's chest to force him back. Makoto was shocked and thought, "Why does this move look like gentle fist?" He didn't know that this was a move Shintaro imitated after understanding the principles of gentle fist with the 6 eyes. At this moment, Makoto had lost his previous confidence and hurriedly called for the people around him to rush forward. However, Shintaro walked among them. Makoto's gentle fist couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes, let alone the fragmented gentle fist mastered by this group of trash. Shintaro's flexibility was also due to the strong inside of the 6 eyes and the strong physical fitness brought by cursed energy. These 2 cheats from his past life made his strength far surpass his peers. And Shintaro didn't just dodge without fighting back. While dodging, he extended his fingers to poke the acupuncture points of several people. The smarter thing was that he also used the weaknesses of their encirclement to make them hit each other with their gentle fist. Makoto finally regained his composure and rushed into the crowd, but Shintaro quickly struck his acupuncture point. Makoto's whole body immediately went numb. Shintaro pulled him and turned around, just in time to use him to block one of the Hyuga clan members. Makoto cursed angrily. "Don't you have eyes?" The other party was terrified and humbly apologized immediately. Shintaro gave no face, grabbed Makoto's arm, and threw him, aiming at the round-faced Hyuga clan member. With a bang, accompanied by the screams of both people, they were thrown together and couldn't get up again. Shintaro's eyes turned to the others, making them tremble and afraid to step forward. So he took the initiative and defeated everyone with 3 punches and 2 kicks. This scene made Tetsuo and the others, who were watching the battle from the sidelines, tighten their sphincters, as they had ended up like this last time. Among those watching the battle, Tetsuo reacted the fastest and shouted, "Boss Shintaro is mighty." Hamasu and the others shouted, "Boss is mighty! Boss is mighty!" Shintaro gestured for them to calm down, and the volume gradually decreased. He lowered his head and asked, "Still want this place?" The defeated didn't dare to answer. They all waited for Makoto to speak. Makoto said painfully, not anymore satisfied. Shintaro walked away, and the people piled in the human tower rose one by one. Makoto covered his swollen cheek and glared at Shintaro. Shintaro noticed Makoto's gaze and turned to look. Makoto was so frightened that he immediately looked away and fled with a few people in despair. During the fight, one of their hair bands had come loose, allowing Shintaro to see the green X-shaped mark on their foreheads. This mark caused the limited brain vision observed by the 6 eyes. The Hyuga clan is really incompetent with seals. Do they use this method to ensure the survival of the main family? With these keywords, Shintaro could roughly infer the hierarchy of the Hyuga clan. He didn't think much of it. This hierarchy only stifled the potential of the family. Compared to the hierarchy and customs of the Hyuga clan, Shintaro was relatively satisfied with the customs of the Uchiha clan. The Uchiha clan always respected strength. No matter whose child, they would be recognized as long as they were strong enough. This was one of the reasons why Shintaro quickly gained recognition from the Uchiha clan. 16. Sister-in-law. At this moment, Tetsuo and the others respectfully approached Shintaro from behind, bowing and saying, "Thank you, boss, for helping me." Shintaro waved his hand, indifferent to their gratitude. In fact, the reason he acted was simply out of interest, and he was intrigued by his opponent from the Hyuga clan. The gentle fist and Byakugan indeed interested Shintaro, but the strength of those people was not praiseworthy. However, he noticed that the attitude of some people towards him seemed much more sincere this time. Not to mention Hamasu, who was already moved. Even the shrewd Tetsuo seemed more genuine towards Shintaro, and the others were the same. There was no harm in Shintaro accepting these young men, so he accepted it calmly. "All right, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving," he said. Tetsuo asked, "Boss, are you interested in having dinner with us? I'll treat you." Shintaro declined Tetsuo's offer. "No, I have someone else to dine with tonight." After saying that, he waved his hand and left. After a while, Tetsuo clapped his hands and said with a sudden realization, "If someone can have dinner with the boss, their relationship must be extraordinary. We should go and find out so we can build a good relationship with that person." Hamasu and the others also felt that what Tetsuo said made sense, and it was clear that they had reached a consensus to cling to Shintaro tightly. At the Yui house, Kurenai was setting the table, which was filled with delicious food, seemingly not homemade but taken from a restaurant. As the only daughter of a Konoha jonin, she had ample savings. Kurenai sat alone in her chair, twirling her fingers, somewhat bored. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Kurenai immediately stood up happily, but she quickly realized that such a reaction was too excessive, so she patted her cheeks twice to calm herself down, then walked to the door and opened it. As expected, it was Shintaro standing outside the door. Shintaro entered and asked casually, "Isn't your uncle here?" Kurenai explained, "My father is on a mission and might not return to Konoha this month, so he left some money for me to pay for our food this month." She explained in great detail, while Shintaro nodded calmly. As a ninja, the time spent on missions was generally longer compared to the time spent idling at home, especially since Shinku was still a jonin. At this moment, Shintaro put on his shoes and looked at Kurenai, saying, "Your face seems a bit red." After that, he went to the bathroom. His hands were a bit dirty after the earlier fight, so he needed to wash them in this situation. Kurenai remained where she was, touching her slightly warm face, feeling annoyed inside. Why do I act like this every time I'm alone with him? After washing his hands, Shintaro came to the dining table and said, "Did you buy this from outside?" He had come to Konoha and had never eaten out. He usually bought food at the Uchiha Clan station and cooked it himself. After all, both his parents had died, which made the already poor family even worse off. Only then did Kurenai react. She walked closer and answered, "Yes, I brought it home from a new barbecue restaurant called Barbecue Q. Don't you like barbecue? There's also sugar," she said while walking to the kitchen and bringing out a plate of white sugar. Shintaro smiled, took the sugar, and said, "Thank you, I like it." The two of them sat together. The barbecue restaurant had provided them with a simple wooden oven, and the charcoal fire inside was burning brightly. Shintaro took the rack and placed pieces of meat on it one by one, waiting calmly for the barbecue to cook. The sight of sizzling oil was a beautiful scene he hadn't seen in a long time. While waiting for the barbecue to cook, Kurenai asked what had happened earlier. "What did you mean when you said you had something to do after school?" Shintaro didn't avoid anything and answered honestly, "I went to fight." Such an understated statement scared Kurenai. Fighting could easily remind people of some violent incidents. Kurenai immediately lifted Shintaro's clothes to see if he was injured. To her surprise, there were no scars on Shintaro's body, only smooth white skin. She quickly realized the impropriety of her actions and hurriedly put her hands down, lowering her head and mumbling in a mosquito-like voice, "Sorry." Shintaro smiled indifferently and said, "Those opponents wouldn't be able to hurt me." After that, he saw the barbecue was ready, so he gave Kurenai 2 pieces each. He himself put sugar in his hand, took a slice of meat with chopsticks, and dipped it in the sugar to eat. 2 great hobbies in life merged into one, making it difficult for the usually calm Shintaro to control himself. Seeing this, Kurenai also shifted her attention to the barbecue and started eating. Whether it was due to the barbecue's heat or for other reasons, her face remained red until Shintaro left the house. Another day passed. The next day, Shintaro came to school, as usual, but he heard many rumors about him along the way. "Is that Uchiha Shintaro? He's so handsome. Hey, don't look at how handsome and gentle he is, but he's now a bully at our school." "Really? What happened?" "I heard he led some Uchiha Clan members to beat up a group of Hyuga Clan members yesterday. Among those beaten were seniors about to graduate. Very strong, but then the Hyuga Clan will deal with him." "Ha ha. I heard the Hyuga Clan sent people to the Uchiha Clan for an explanation, but they were sent away. You see, the Uchiha Clan is protecting him strongly. Don't you know how powerful he is?" "Wow, that's really amazing." Under various rumors, for some reason, Shintaro's image in the minds of the students became higher and more unapproachable. Shintaro didn't pay much attention to this, only considering it as children's play. When he came to class, he thought that with his current reputation, the little fans would calm down. But he didn't expect girls his age to be so fanatic. Shintaro was so annoyed that he had to scare the girls who came around him with a cold face so that he could attend class normally. During the class break, Kurenai took Anko out to use the restroom. When she returned, she was different from her usual self and angrily said to Shintaro, "Go out and take care of your friends. Don't let them talk nonsense." Shintaro was confused, but seeing Kurenai's reaction and the funny expression on Anko's face beside her, it wasn't hard to conclude that they must have heard something outside. So he left the classroom and saw Tetsuo and the others. Tetsuo approached him with a smile on his face, giving a thumbs up and saying, "Boss, sister-in-law is very pretty." Shintaro immediately understood why Kurenai had reacted the way she did earlier, so he slapped Tetsuo's head, making him shrink his neck in fear. "Don't shout that again. We're just friends." Only then did Tetsuo realize he had been careless. Seeing Tetsuo's expression, Shintaro probably remembered it. He was about to turn and leave, but suddenly he turned back and said, as if remembering something, "Also, there are a lot of rumors recently. Control yourself. I don't like hearing these rumors." Tetsuo nodded repeatedly, and Shintaro returned to his seat in the classroom. "I already told you they won't brag randomly in the future." Kurenai hummed softly, and it was unclear whether she was happy or not. After some advice from Shintaro and whatever method Tetsuo and the others used, the rumors about Shintaro and Kurenai at school did die down. At least they didn't reach Shintaro's ears anymore. 17. Early graduation days at the ninja school passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, Shintaro had been at the school for a semester. It was time for graduation at the end of the semester. The ninja school system spanned 5 grades, and his class was still in the 1st grade. The graduation season of Konoha 42 currently seemed unrelated to their class. It made sense that they would have to wait until Konoha 46 to graduate. However, this class had a student who would graduate, Hatake Kakashi. "Kakashi, do you really want to graduate early?" Rin asked worriedly. "Yes," Hokage-sama agreed. Kakashi nodded. What's the big deal?" Obito said jealously. In fact, the news of Kakashi's early graduation had spread throughout the school. The son of Konoha's White Fang seemed to be starting to show his extraordinary talent. If Kakashi truly graduated this time, he would become the youngest genin in Konoha's history. Next to Shintaro, Kurenai was also interested in Kakashi's early graduation. "Shintaro, do you think Kakashi can graduate early?" "It's very easy for him to graduate early with his strength," Shintaro said, sharing his true thoughts. In fact, when Kakashi first entered the school, his strength had already reached the level of an ordinary graduate. After a semester training, his strength had surpassed the level needed to graduate successfully. Then why don't you take the graduation exam first? Isn't your strength the same as Kakashi's? Shintaro was silent for a moment before saying, graduating early might not be a good thing. Kurenai didn't understand, but she nodded in understanding. Their relationship had become quite close after a semester of getting along, and they had a mutual understanding. Thus, Shintaro's ideas were often forward-looking, and it didn't matter if she didn't understand them for the time being. In Shintaro's view, graduating early would certainly make Kakashi the youngest genin in Konoha's history, but becoming a genin came at a cost. It meant losing leisure time for training and being burdened with numerous tasks. Shintaro had once visited Konoha's task collection office and saw that most of the tasks that were low-level and meaningless, such as catching kittens, feeding puppies, picking up trash, and patrolling. Most of these tasks were carried out by genin and chunin. Shintaro felt dizzy thinking about doing such tasks after graduation. It was just a waste of life, and any task would take up time. At his current age, this was the golden period for training, and the foundation for becoming strong in the future was laid at this stage. If training time was consumed by various tasks at this stage, it would take more time to make up for the lost foundation in the future. So Shintaro's current idea was to graduate honestly. After successfully being promoted to genin, he would immediately try to be promoted to chunin to avoid as many low-level, meaningless tasks as possible. The final exam and the graduation exam were held simultaneously. After the final exam, everyone in the class waited outside the graduation exam room because Kakashi was still taking the exam inside. While everyone discussed the difficulty of this year's final exam, they also discussed whether Kakashi could pass the graduation exam. The consensus was that everyone believed Kakashi could pass the exam because he was Kakashi. There was only one person who seemed dissatisfied with this, and that was Obito. Shintaro didn't have a close relationship with his clan members, but he also knew that Obito and Kakashi had a bad relationship on the surface, but it was just awkwardness among kids. The reason for this awkwardness was the little girl, Noera Rin, next to Obito. And there was another person who noticed this, Sarutobi Asuma. Unlike Shintaro, who saw this through his experience and vision from a previous life, Asuma purely felt the same. Asuma and Obito could be said to be in a heart-to-heart relationship at this point. Both liked girls, Obito liked Rin, and Asuma liked Kurenai. But the girls they liked both admired a genius. Just as Rin admired Kakashi, Kurenai admired Shintaro. However, unlike Obito's persistence, Asuma had let go of Kurenai in his heart. He considered himself a smart person. After a semester of being ignored, he finally realized that it was impossible for Kurenai and him to be together. Initially, he and Kurenai chatted quite harmoniously, and they stayed together every day. Just when things were getting better, Shintaro came along, and everything changed, and Kurenai started to ignore him. This difference really disappointed Asuma. In his heart, he sympathized with Obito, but he also had admiration and envy. Needless to say, admiration was for Obito's sincerity and dedication to Rin, which made Asuma feel ashamed, and envy was just envy. Rin was actually very kind to Obito. As the students outside were busy talking, the exam room door opened. Kakashi, wearing a black top and a green scarf, with a mask on his face as usual, emerged. The only difference was a forehead protector with the Konoha logo on it. The forehead protector symbolized becoming a ninja, so it was certain that Kakashi had successfully passed the graduation exam. Everyone congratulated Kakashi one by one. Guy raised his hand enthusiastically and said, "Kakashi, you are worthy of being my rival. You become a genin so quickly. It seems I need to train harder." Rin smiled gently and said, "Kakashi, congratulations on becoming a genin." Kurenai and Shintaro stood together, clapping. Asuma also clapped among the audience, but there was one person who didn't congratulate Kakashi, and that was Obito. Kakashi took the initiative to approach Obito and looked at him, as if waiting for congratulations. However, what he got was Obito angrily shouting, "I won't congratulate you." Then he ran off alone. Most of the classmates didn't care about Obito, the weakest in the class, but they just felt it was very inappropriate for him to act like that on such an occasion. Only Rin kept looking at Obito's back with a worried expression. After congratulating Kakashi again, she left early, apparently to comfort Obito, who had run off in anger. All this was seen by Shintaro, but he didn't care. He knew Rin's character and Obito's attitude towards Rin, so Rin would certainly manage to calm Obito down. 18. Practicing ninjutsu, Kakashi graduated early and began his ninja career, while the other students in the class welcomed their own vacation. Vacation life was freer than school life. Ninja school had no holiday homework, so the vacation was free time. However, Shintaro's vacation life wasn't different from his school life. He didn't plan to relax or have fun during the vacation. Instead, he continued to train hard. This world wasn't much different from his previous life's world. Shintaro believed that strength was the foundation, no matter what world he was in. Moreover, vacation gave him more free time to train since he no longer had to attend meaningless training classes at school. The training resources around him were quite abundant. Besides his father's legacy, Fugaku and Shinku also helped him a lot. Additionally, Shintaro had a pair of 6 eyes that could clearly see the principles of ninjutsu and could be used to mimic others' techniques. With so many places to train, he had a busy schedule during the vacation. Ninjutsu, taijutsu, jinjutsu. Except for going out every day to have dinner with Kurenai, Shintaro mostly trained in the open space next to his house. One day while eating, Kurenai offered to train together. Shintaro, let's train together tomorrow. I want to start practicing the jinjutsu my father taught me. In fact, Shintaro wanted to refuse in his heart because Kurenai's current strength was too different from his, and their training progress was not consistent. But today, Shinku was present. He happily patted Shintaro and said, "Good, you can train together. Kurenai, you should train with Shintaro during the vacation. His jinjutsu talent is stronger than yours. You should learn diligently from Shintaro." Hearing this, Shintaro had no reason to refuse. No problem. Kurenai and I will train together in the future. So, they made a plan to train together at Konoha's training ground every afternoon. The next day, Shintaro first went to Kurenai's house to gather, and then they walked together to Konoha's 3rd training ground. On the way, they met classmates Kakashi and Guy. Guy dragged Kakashi, who was rolling his eyes, onto the road and said, "I want to help you reconcile with Obito. The best way to reconcile between men is to exercise together. This is youth." Kakashi reluctantly said, "I'm very busy," Guy said with an unbelieving expression. "You're not even wearing your forehead protector today. You must not have a mission. You're still hiding in the bookstore reading weird books. How can you be as busy as you say?" Exposed, Kakashi looked a bit embarrassed and could only agree to his request. Guy was very happy and said, "I've already made an appointment with Obito to meet us. He definitely wants to reconcile with you too." As he chatted with Kakashi on the road, Shintaro and Kurenai passed by. Passing through the center of the village, Shintaro's 6 eyes observed something unusual. It was a large circular barrier that seemed to suppress a powerful force. At this moment, a beautiful red-haired woman stood at the edge of the barrier. Behind the woman stood 2 mysterious men wearing cloaks and masks. In front of the woman was a handsome young man with yellow hair. Behind him was a group of people who seemed to be waiting for him. The 2 were talking, which caught Shintaro's attention. According to the information obtained through the 6 eyes, the yellow-haired man was very strong, even stronger than Yuhi Shinku and Uchiha Fugaku. But what shocked Shintaro more was the power contained within the woman's body, which was even more terrifying. It was a force he had never seen before, full of violence and tyranny. He suspected the entire barrier was to suppress this force. Kurenai noticed that Shintaro was looking at the 2 talking people, so she introduced, "The red-haired woman is the Kyubi Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Kushina, and the person opposite her is the genius Jonin, Namikaze Minato. He's Jiraiya-sama's disciple." As the only daughter of Shinku, Kurenai had more knowledge in the village than Shintaro. Biju, Jinchuriki, and Jiraiya, one of Konoha's Sannin, even though Shintaro had been in Konoha for less than a year, he had heard of them. He listened to Kurenai's introduction and roughly understood the status of these 2 people. Both could be considered high-level officials in Konoha. A few people walked closer, and Kakashi and Guy saw Obito waiting at the barrier. Guy happily raised his hand to greet, and Kakashi and Obito shook hands. Their relationship didn't seem as tense as before. The three went to practice physical skills together, with Guy leading and running around the village. But clearly, only Guy was enthusiastic, while Kakashi and Obito were speechless about this kind of training. Shintaro was currently listening to the conversation between Minato and Kushina. Minato said apologetically, "Sorry, Kushina, I came here to tell you I'll be practicing ninjutsu elsewhere today." Kushina put her hands on her hips and asked with an unhappy expression, "Elsewhere?" The third training ground. Minato, very aware of Kushina's emotions, opened his hands to explain, "That's because the ninjutsu isn't finished yet and is still very dangerous. I don't want you to get hurt." When Kushina got angry, her red hair lifted. She pointed at Minato angrily and said, "If you hate being with me, just say it." Minato hurriedly explained, "I never thought like that." At this moment, a companion behind Minato urged him to report the mission to the Hokage. Minato could only turn and leave a message. "Sorry, I'm leaving. See you later." Kushina subconsciously wanted to follow, but was stopped by the two masked men behind her. All this was seen by Shintaro and Kurenai. Kurenai seemed to empathize with Kushina and said from his side, "Those two are A and B responsible for protecting the Jinchuriki. Jinchuriki can't even date the one they love. It's so sad." She felt pity for the Jinchuriki situation, and when she said, "the one they love," she looked at Shintaro with empathy, as if she placed herself in Kushina's perspective. But Shintaro next to her had very different concerns. "The power of Bijou is out of my reach for now, but I can try the new technique Namikaze Minato just mentioned. The power of this ninjutsu, considered dangerous even by strong people, can be imagined." Shintaro became curious about the new technique Minato mentioned. So he said to Kurenai, "Let's go to the third training ground." 19. Rasengan at Konoha's third training ground. Shintaro and Kurenai found a secluded spot under the bright sun and began their training. Kurenai's initial training focus was on Jinjutsu. Jinjutsu was a specialty of the Uchih family. Although the Uchih family was not a ninja clan, it was a well-known Jinjutsu family in Konoha village. At least 3 or 4 generations were represented in the Uchih family. Kurenai inherited her father's talent for Jinjutsu, but Shinku was busy with work and neglected to teach his own daughter. Shinku saw Shintaro's talent again, especially in Jinjutsu. So this time, Shintaro brought Kurenai along to train, and Shinku specifically asked him to train his daughter in Jinjutsu. Of course, Shintaro agreed. After all, this way he could legitimately practice the set of Jinjutsu techniques that Shinku had given them. "We'll start practicing Jinjutsu techniques. These are the Jinjutsu techniques that Uncle Shinku personally showed me before. These techniques are also recorded in the collection of Jinjutsu techniques left by my father. I've mastered them now, and I can count it as having some experience." Shintaro began his instruction, saying they would train together, but in reality, he was teaching and Kurenai was learning. However, teaching was mutually beneficial, and Shintaro could also deepen his understanding while teaching. Moreover, Kurenai was a very well-behaved student. When facing Shintaro, who was a year younger than her, she showed no disdain at all. This was largely due to her character and how Shintaro was always a genius. The principle is very simple. Project your own chakra into the enemy's visual senses. Shintaro began teaching Jinjutsu step by step. Kurenai learned very seriously, but Shintaro was not as focused as she was. While Shintaro was busy teaching, demonstrating Jinjutsu, and explaining techniques and tips, he quietly observed the various activities at the third training ground. The third training ground was very quiet at this time. Except for Shintaro and Kurenai, there was no one else there. In the vast open space, one could almost hear the chirping of insects and birds in the grass and forest. Namikaze Minato will arrive soon. Shintaro had been keeping track of time in his mind. Minato should have finished reporting his mission to the Hokage by now. If his conversation with Kushina was correct, he should be on his way to the third training ground now. Shintaro was thinking about the mysterious ninjutsu that was not yet fully developed. Sure enough, it didn't take long for the handsome figure of Minato to appear at the third training ground. But there was someone else beside him. The man was clearly much older than Minato, with long white braided hair, wearing a brown inner layer and a red outer coat. He had a mole on the left side of his nose and red marks under each eye. He looked like a very good person. In terms of chakra, he's even stronger than Minato. Is this the legendary Sannin of Konoha? Shintaro felt a little surprised in his heart. Minato surpassed Fugaku and Shinku in Shintaro's perception, and the man in front of him surpassed Minato. Today, he saw two top powerhouses in succession. He believed that although these two might not be the highest combat power in the world, they were probably close to it. Shintaro knew there was a Hokage above the Konoha Sannin, and there were 5 recognized Kages in the ninja world. Jiraiya might not be much different in power from Kage. Kurenai noticed that Shintaro was looking at the 2 people who had just arrived at the third training ground, so she stopped what she was doing and said, "That's Jiraiya-sama, one of the 3 Sannin." Shintaro nodded and continued guiding Kurenai's training as if nothing had happened. Minato and Jiraiya also noticed Shintaro and Kurenai, but they didn't take the 2 children seriously. The large third training ground could accommodate 2 groups of people training without disturbing each other. "How far has your new technique developed?" Jiraiya asked casually. Minato rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment and said, "Not much progress, so I invited you here today to seek a breakthrough." Jiraiya nodded and said, "Your new technique has been in development for 3 years. I really should come and help you. Don't worry, I'll take care of it." He patted his chest and expressed confidence, while Minato still looked somewhat silly. After a while, the 2 began to get serious. Minato became serious, holding his right wrist with his left hand, and opened his right hand upwards, maintaining a slightly empty grip. Shintaro's attention was drawn again this time. Thanks to the 6 eyes, he could detect every movement Minato made, including his hand movements. Is he practicing? No need to form seals. Such an operation, Minato's technique surprised Shintaro because he had never seen it performed without forming seals before. He saw a chakra ball condense from thin air in Minato's hand, and it began to spin, slowly forming a blue chakra ball. Minato saw the new technique starting to form, and just as he smiled happily, the chakra ball in his hand began to tremble. His face immediately became serious, and he didn't dare to relax at all. Jiraiya beside him also watched Minato's situation as if facing a formidable enemy. However, the chakra ball swung increasingly askew, even starting to vibrate at high frequency. At this moment, Jiraiya shouted a warning, and Minato immediately slammed his right hand into the ground. Boom! With a burst of dust and smoke, a large crater almost 1 meter deep and 3 meters wide was created in the ground. Several people could lie in it without any problem. Shintaro was shocked that a small chakra ball could cause such extensive damage and mentally hoped the other party would quickly perfect this ninjutsu, so he could mimic it. Minato fell to the ground from the impact of the blast. He stared helplessly at the large hole in the ground, then chose to stand up and continue practicing. However, his training results were not satisfactory. He created several large holes in the ground, but failed to understand the shape of the chakra ball. Not only were Minato and Jiraiya worried, but Shintaro also looked anxious. However, there was no point in rushing, so Minato and Jiraiya chose to take a break. Minato sat on the ground with his hands behind his back and sighed. "It's too hard to control this. If you can't rotate it, it will explode or something. It can't be stabilized," Jiraiya said. "Then which direction should I go?" Minato anxiously asked Jiraiya, the teacher he always considered like a father. "I don't know either." Jiraiya fell silent for a moment, then thought for a long time before continuing, "It might not necessarily be wrong. I've always imagined chakra should be refined by rotating to the right because I'm left-handed. I heard before that when refining chakra, it's easier to refine it in the direction of the head's rotation. If so, then this jutsu would also," Jiraiya said, about to check Minato's head rotation. Minato muttered, "Is this just superstition? There are 2 rotations on your head, one to the left and one to the right. Jiraiya's expression turned silent. Minato exclaimed, A20. QB unseals itself after training. The two sat on a large rock in the training area to rest. Minato, I want an ice pop, Jiraiya said, winking. Minato nodded and agreed with a gentle smile, then disappeared in an instant. Shintaro noticed Minato's aura vanish suddenly, turned in surprise, and looked at Jiraiya. Only then did he confirm that Minato had truly disappeared, not just moved a few hundred meters away. At this moment, Jiraiya also glanced at him. Shintaro didn't dare to look further and turned away. Disappearing instead of moving at high speed indicated that Minato's ninjutsu involved spatial manipulation. This world seems more interesting than I thought, Shintaro thought to himself. Since Minato vanished instantly, even the 6 eyes couldn't unravel the mystery. To see through this spatial ninjutsu, Minato might need to demonstrate it within Shintaro's field of vision. Before the shock in his heart completely subsided, Minato's figure reappeared in the training area. He was holding a bottle of water and 2 ice pops. He handed one to Jiraiya and sat down to sip his water. Jiraiya took the ice pop, unwrapped it, and asked, "Which side do you want?" "Doesn't matter." Minato initially thought it didn't matter, but suddenly realized something. The words are the same there. An idea popped into his mind, and he immediately jumped up and shouted, "That's it, Jiraiya-sensei." If the extraction is the same, no matter the direction, he felt he had uncovered the secret to a new technique. But Jiraiya indifferently said, "Huh? What's up? Don't you want to eat? Then I'll eat both." Minato concentrated on developing the new technique, leaving Jiraiya alone and returning to the center of the training area to continue trying. Fix, rotate, and maintain from 2 directions simultaneously. We'll definitely succeed this time. Minato raised his right hand and started to condense chakra. Whether it was due to nerves, this time it took him a long time to condense the chakra, and slowly the chakra appeared in his hand. 2 streams of chakra emerged in his palm simultaneously, starting to rotate in different directions, and a chakra ball quickly formed. This time was different from the others. This time the chakra ball remained very stable. The 2 chakras continued to spin at high speed, internally without affecting the external stability at all. For the first time, it's forming. The strong wind from the chakra ball blew Minato's yellow hair, and a bright smile filled his handsome face. "Let's call it." At this moment, Jiraiya finished chewing his ice pop and approached just as Minato was about to announce the name loudly. "Kurin Reika Hekita Revitalizing Sushikinigan." Ugly and long. You have no talent for naming. Jiraiya looked at Minato, who thought he had achieved something very clever, speechless. Minato's voice even reached Shintaro and Kurenai, and they both agreed, bad name. The name was very logical, but unfortunately, it was ugly. Shintaro saw the blue chakra ball in Minato's hand from a distance, and while activating the 6 eyes to analyze the ninjutsu, he sighed, "If I had to name it, I would call it Rasengan." After a while, Minato dispelled the Kurin Reika Hekitsu Lijidriya Sushikinigan, and Shintaro also completed the analysis of this ninjutsu with a long and ugly name. Jiraiya said to Minato at this time, "Anyway, the development of the new technique should end now. I have other application matters to attend to, so I'll leave for a bit. You can take this opportunity to get some good rest, understand?" Minato seemed still immersed in the new technique he had just mastered and casually replied, "Yeah." Jiraiya just left the training area. Minato was leaning against a rock near the forest, continuing to refine his new technique. It seemed unrealistic for him to rest at this moment. On the other hand, Shintaro was in a good mood after imitating such a powerful technique. He happily continued to teach Kurenai how to use Jinjutsu. Kurenai thought Shintaro was just mocking Minato's bad naming and thought to herself, "I didn't expect Shintaro to have such a childish side." Time passed. Shintaro and Kurenai had almost completed their training progress for the day. Minato was also familiar with his new technique, and the 3 of them were ready to leave the training area. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the forest. It was Uzumaki Kushina. Shintaro was the first to notice Kushina hiding in the forest. Minato waited until Kushina poked her head out before looking up in surprise. Why are you here, Kushina? Is it okay? Kushina raised her voice a bit guiltily and explained. No. Sandame-sama gave special permission. He said it was okay to leave the barrier. I see. No wonder the usual supervisor isn't here. Minato easily believed Kushina's words. Shintaro, who was about to leave, had a look of surprise on his face. Do you believe this? Is the IQ of Konoha Jonin so low? The six eyes did not see the A&B responsible for guarding, and the seal on Kushina's body seemed significantly loosened. Clearly, Kushina had snuck out by herself. This isn't a good place to stay for long. Shintaro raised his alertness internally, while also pulling Kurenai away. Holding her hand, Kurenai felt a moment of embarrassment. Compared to this, it's my fault earlier. I was mad at you. Kushina bowed sincerely and apologized. Minato was stunned for a moment, then lowered his eyebrows and said, No, I should be the one apologizing. I failed to keep my promise to you. After he finished speaking, he was silent for a while and decided to reveal his true feelings. Actually, the reason I wanted to complete the ninjutsu earlier, even if it meant breaking my promise to you, is because this ninjutsu was created to protect you. Kushina heard Minato talk about the initial intention of developing the new technique for the first time. Because we are in the midst of war, you might be sent to the battlefield someday. Therefore, I specifically developed this design to counter Bijou, to fight enemy Jinchuriki. Minato expressed his true thoughts, then looked at Kushina with a gentle expression. Because I don't want to lose you. Minato's words were like a soft yet powerful cannonball, exploding a flower called heartbeat in Kushina. However, as Kushina's heart trembled, the QB inside her suddenly became enraged and directly seized control of her body. Kushina's pupils turned into the fierce fox's vertical pupils. In Kushina's spiritual world, the QB, partially unsealed, bewitched Kushina with words, I should have told you not to trust anyone. This person is using you. However, Kushina worried about Minato's safety and shouted his name. Minato noticed Kushina holding her head and bending over in pain and asked concernedly, What's wrong, Kushina? Kushina roared, and then a significant amount of terrifying chakra erupted from her body. This Bijou transformation. Minato was shocked, then was thrown by a close-range punch from the rampaging Kushina. 21. Sealing the QB at this moment, Shintaro thought he was unlucky and immediately fled with Kurenai. His six eyes detected that the QB had leaked most of its power. With his current strength, he would be close to death if he stayed at the training ground. Seeing that Kurenai did not realize the gravity of the situation and couldn't move forward, Shintaro forcibly carried her in a princess hold, filled his legs with cursed energy, and fled at unprecedented speed. Is Bijou's power this terrifying? The chakra leaked by the QB utterly shocked Shintaro, making him understand why everyone in the village feared the Jinchuriki. Brutal and uncontrolled power is often only used for destruction. In Kushina's spiritual world, the QB struggled to break free from the seal while continually disturbing Kushina's mind. Quickly release all the seals. This way, you can be free from this pain. If you refuse, I will possess you and kill you. At this critical moment, Minato rushed toward Kushina despite his injuries, condensed chakra in his right hand, and slapped Kushina's stomach. Kushina. He used his chakra to reinforce the Hack no Fin Shiki. The QB, frightened within the seal, even compared Minato's talent to the first Hokage's. Sealing techniques are known to be the most challenging among all techniques, especially high-level ones passed down by the Uzumaki clan, like Hack no Fin Shiki. Shintaro noticed that the QB's power had been contained, so he slowed his escape and decided to observe the scene from a distance. The QB, speaking with Kushina's voice, asked, Why does a ninja like you cling to this little girl? Clearly, the QB harbored much hatred toward Minato, who thwarted its plans. Minato held Kushina's shoulders and said, I like strong people. I like people who are stronger than me. So I deeply love Kushina and can't bear to lose her. Minato's touching words of love were all heard by Kushina, in her spiritual world. She recalled the teachings given to her by Uzumaki Mido, the former Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Kushina, we might be at the center of the vortex, but if we climb voluntarily, we will find love. Kushina's eyes became resolute as she realized she had found her love. She rose to fight the Kyuubi, using Kong FSA to try and reseal it. The Kyuubi, enraged, didn't expect that its actions would inadvertently bring Minato and Kushina closer together, making it seem like a matchmaker. The Kyuubi, furious, condensed a Bijidama in the spiritual world and used the chains to slam Kushina to the ground. At the same time, in the real world, the leaked Kyuubi chakra caused Kushina to bleed terribly, with a chakra cloak attaching to her body and 7 tails forming behind her. Kushina stabbed Minato with a single punch. Kushina, in the spiritual world, cried out, "Minato, just leave. Go. Get out of here." Minato didn't leave, but looked at her firmly and said, "I won't go. I'll never go." Despite his injuries, he placed one hand on Kushina's stomach to strengthen the seal while hugging her tightly, thus entering Kushina's spiritual world. I can feel Kushina always sensing my presence in her heart. Minato jumped high in Kushina's spiritual world, using the developed ninjutsu. Kushina took the opportunity to strengthen the Kong FSA and restrain the Kyuubi's movements. The Kyuubi had no choice but to use the newly condensed Bijidama in its mouth to fight directly with Kurin Reika Hakitsamuji Jiraiya Sushikinigan. "I will never give Kushina to you." 2 chakra-filled balls collided fiercely with an astonishing force. The explosion that erupted instantly caused Minato, who was nearby, to lose consciousness. When he woke up, the first thing he saw was the hospital ceiling. Kushina looked at him worriedly from beside the bed. Minato sat up dazed. Kushina immediately hugged him. Minato was reluctant to let go for a long time, making her cry out in pain, but also enjoying it. Jiraiya and Tsunade stood by the hospital bed with relieved expressions, watching the young couple before them. After they finished being affectionate, Minato thanked Jiraiya and Tsunade from his hospital bed. "Thank you, Sensei and Tsunade-sama, for saving me." Both Jiraiya and Tsunade waved their hands, saying there was no need for thanks. "You were picked up by those 2 kids at the training ground. If you want to thank someone, go thank them," said Tsunade. Tsunade added, "I didn't heal your injuries. I just provided the treatment plan." Shizen was the surgeon. Minato still expressed his gratitude respectfully, while simultaneously thinking about the 2 kids Jiraiya had mentioned. One was a boy with white hair and blue eyes, and the other was a girl with black hair and red eyes. "I must thank them later," Minato reminded himself internally. A week later, at the Yuhi family's house, Shintaro and Kurenai were preparing to have dinner together when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, Shintaro's 6 eyes had already identified the visitor. It was Minato. Shintaro and Kurenai came to the door together and opened it. Minato, wearing casual sports clothes, seemed to have recovered from his injuries. He smiled and said, "Hello, everyone. Thank you both for taking me to the hospital from the 3rd training ground." Shintaro responded lightly. "With such a big commotion, even if we didn't come, someone else would have." On the surface, he and Kurenai bowed to Minato. "This is what we should have done." Minato quickly waved his hand and said, No, I must thank you. You're students at the Ninja Academy, right? Coincidentally, I've developed a new ninjutsu to teach you." Shintaro and Kurenai exchanged glances, already understanding what this new technique was. "Is it Kurin Reika Hakitsu Muji Jiraiya Sushikinigan?" Shintaro asked hesitantly. If it was this ninjutsu, it would perfectly explain his copy. Minato smiled slightly and nodded. "Yes, but now it has a new name. It was given by my girlfriend. It's called Rasengan." "Rasengan, that's a nice name," Shintaro praised. In fact, both he and Kurenai thought the simple new name was great. Minato showed a rather natural smile, as if he had chosen the name himself. This way, he taught everyone the training method for Rasengan. Shintaro had already mastered it, but continued to pretend to learn it for a week before mastering it, astonishing Minato with his talent. After all, it had taken Minato 3 years of development to master the same concept, always finding something unbalanced. Kurenai wasn't adept at ninjutsu, but non-elemental ninjutsu like Rasengan was suitable for someone like her with no foundational ninjutsu. So she spent more than 2 months with Shintaro's help, and by the start of the next semester, she had barely mastered Rasengan. 22. Challenger Konoha, Year 43. After class, Shintaro was refining his chakra at his desk. Kurenai and Anko were chatting about all the interesting things that had happened recently. I heard Kakashi has been promoted to Chunin. Anko revealed a crucial piece of information. Kurenai was slightly surprised and asked in disbelief, "Really?" "Yes, I honestly overheard my father talking about it." "Then Kakashi has become the youngest Chunin in Konoha," Kurenai said, looking at Shintaro, who was training. Shintaro never cared about this kind of false reputation, but the people of Konoha had labeled Kakashi and Shintaro as the two strongest geniuses at the moment. Thus, Kurenai was somewhat concerned about his thoughts. Even though Shintaro was refining his chakra, he could still hear the noise outside, so he also knew about Kakashi's promotion to Chunin. He noticed Kurenai looking at him, so he opened his eyes, looked at Kurenai, and said, "Kakashi's promotion to Chunin shows that his strength has made great progress. But this has nothing to do with me. The villagers want to compare me to him. That's their business." Kurenai nodded, feeling that Shintaro truly didn't care about fame. But at that moment, Kotetsu entered the classroom, bringing news. "Boss Shintaro, Hatake Kakashi just asked me to tell you something at the school gate. He wants to challenge you again." He was so cheerful that almost the entire class heard him. The originally noisy class suddenly became silent. Why does Kakashi want to challenge Shintaro again? Uchiha Kotetsu is an underling of Uchiha Shintaro. What he says must be true. The students in the class immediately engaged in an unprecedentedly heated discussion, speculating whether Shintaro would agree to this fight and who the winner would be if the fight happened. Kotetsu came to Shintaro, waiting for his answer. Under the attention of the entire class, Shintaro agreed, "Sure." Kotetsu immediately gave a thumbs up and said, "I knew the boss wouldn't be afraid." He immediately went out and continued playing his role as a messenger. Kurenai asked with a worried face, "Can you win?" Shintaro replied, "Nah, I'd win." His tone was very calm, as if stating an indisputable fact. Kurenai felt reassured, and her heart was at ease. Rin placed her hands on her chest and prayed, "Kakashi, you must win." Although she said this, she felt very uncertain inside. After Kakashi graduated, their interactions became less frequent, so Rin didn't know Kakashi's current strength. Even though Kakashi was promoted to Chunin, Rin knew nothing about the term Chunin, so she couldn't imagine Kakashi's current strength. But she could see Shintaro's strength with her own eyes. After Kakashi left, Shintaro became the undisputed number 1 in the entire class at the school, leading by a large margin. Therefore, in Rin's view, the outcome of the fight between Kakashi and Shintaro was unpredictable. Seeing her so concerned about Kakashi, Obito pursed his lips angrily and said, "If you lose, you lose." After all, Kakashi has already lost once. But even though he said this, he didn't necessarily think so in his heart. Obito didn't want Kakashi to lose again. The logic was this: if Kakashi lost to Shintaro twice, wouldn't that prove that Kakashi's strength was indeed not up to his reputation? And Obito always regarded Kakashi as a target to pursue. Wouldn't that mean his efforts were meaningless? It turned out that not only Obito thought this way, but Guy also had similar thoughts. He always believed that Kakashi was the one he wanted to surpass, so he often dragged him to fight with him. Guy's current record was 0 wins, 16 losses, and 0 draws, which could be considered pitiful. However, he never gave up because he knew that Kakashi was a genius in the entire ninja world. So now, unconsciously, he didn't want Kakashi to lose. The place where Shintaro and Kakashi would fight was at the school. After school, Shintaro came to the agreed place, the same school training ground as before. Kurenai followed him, and behind them was a large group of spectators. Everyone seemed accustomed to seeing Shintaro and Kurenai together. A group of people arrived near the school training ground, and Kakashi was already waiting in the training ground. He was wearing a short-sleeved black outfit. His neck and the lower part of his face were still hidden behind a black mask, but couldn't hide his slim and handsome appearance. The iron arm guards shining on his arms and the Konoha forehead protector on his forehead showed Kakashi's status as a ninja and his dangerous aura that strangers should keep away from. Kakashi's arrival made many little girls in the Ninja Academy cheer. Rin looked at Kakashi tenderly, full of longing. When Obito saw this scene, he immediately felt that all his worries about Kakashi were in vain. Kakashi, you better lose. Shintaro walked to the training ground alone. Kurenai could only see Shintaro's back and pray for him. I didn't expect you to agree right away. It happens that I don't have a mission today. Indeed, as a Chunin, Kakashi's daily time must be less leisurely compared to Shintaro's. Therefore, Shintaro agreeing to fight that day was, of course, a good thing for Kakashi. Shintaro smiled slightly and said, "Looks like you got the wrong idea, so let me tell you." Kakashi raised his eyes and looked at him. A tuft of white hair stuck between his eyes by his forehead protector, slightly swaying in the wind. Shintaro extended his finger and said, "You're the challenger here." This sentence was heard by everyone present. Kotetsu and the others immediately cheered Shintaro on enthusiastically. The boss is so cool. Kurenai felt that Shintaro, confidently saying this to Kakashi, was so charming. She was so distracted that she couldn't even hear Anko calling her. Rin still focused on Kakashi, cheering for him silently. Obito and Guy just felt strange. After all, if Kakashi was the challenger, then they were challengers as well. While everyone was discussing Shintaro's words, Kakashi spoke again. "Indeed, I am the challenger." Kakashi calmly accepted the title of challenger, which made Shintaro think more highly of him. It seems you have made a lot of progress this year. Shintaro raised his eyebrows in surprise. The corner of Kakashi's mouth under the mask lifted slightly, and he said, "You will see whether there has been progress or not." 23. Genius versus Genius. Shintaro was still wearing a white outfit and a black jacket with the Uchiha Clan emblem, standing upright against the wind. The two stood facing each other again in this training ground after a year, making people lament the passage of time. Since the teacher was absent, Shintaro asked Kurenai, who was at the side of the training ground, to be the referee. Under the spectators' expectations, Kurenai uttered a few words symbolizing the beginning of the battle. Both sides form the symbol of friendship, and the battle begins. Shintaro and Kakashi naturally formed the symbol of friendship. Kakashi took the lead, which seemed to confirm what they both said earlier, that he was the challenger. He took a kunai from his ninja tool bag, rushed towards Shintaro, raised his hand, and struck. Shintaro lifted his head to avoid the kunai, then raised his leg and launched a fierce attack to force the opponent back. Since class had just ended, he didn't even bring his ninja bag, so he could only fight barehanded. Seeing this, Kakashi threw the kunai in his hand towards Shintaro. The kunai flew deliberately slow, but Shintaro caught it steadily and thanked him. Kakashi said, "I don't want to win by default. I will win with dignity." Shintaro laughed and said, "Win? It seems you're mistaken again. This word needs to be fought for." He was in a good mood and spoke more. "Do you know? Fighting is a pleasure for me, even more than just hunting and playing the shamisen. The shamisen makes me feel peaceful and mysterious. Hunting can relieve stress and relax my body and mind. Only fighting can give me direct happiness. Kakashi, let's enjoy the battle together." Kakashi gripped the kunai in his hand and replied, "That's what I meant." The two closed in again and quickly fought with kunai in their hands. The clash between kunai and kunai continually produced sharp metallic sounds. The two subtle attacks left the spectators amazed. Is this really a fight between our comrades? Many people pondered this question. This is genius. This is a battle between geniuses. Guy sighed with a bit of reluctance. He would envy geniuses, but he would never give up on himself because of this. Instead, he would turn his envy of geniuses into double the demand on himself. The training will be doubled after school today. I will definitely catch up to them. Guy clenched his hands and swore silently. His palms were already full of scars from training. Obito was stunned by the dazzling fight in front of him and could only sigh in his heart that these two were indeed strong. It is worth mentioning that Shintaro's first opponent was defeated by hate. He coughed slightly and sighed in his heart. It wouldn't be shameful for anyone to lose to these two. There was also Shintaro's semi-love rival, Asuma, who thought a bit depressed. Initially, I thought the gap between me and these two wasn't too big, but I didn't expect. Shintaro and Kakashi's current strength had overwhelmed all their peers in Konoha. Only Shintaro could be compared to Kakashi, and only Kakashi could be compared to Shintaro. Outside the field, two little girls cheered for the geniuses they admired. One of these two girls was named Yuhi Kurenai, and the other was Noera Rin. Back on the field, Kakashi and Shintaro clashed several times in a short period, almost without results. Kakashi's kunai slashed towards the opponent's waist. Shintaro avoided the attack without changing his expression, then stepped to Kakashi's side and swung the kunai towards his neck. Kakashi quickly lifted his kunai, trying to block the strike. Clang, since the attack was aimed at a vital point, Kakashi did not dare to be careless, so he used a bit more force to counter it. However, he did not expect that the opponent's move was just a feint. Shintaro only used his kunai to slightly collide with Kakashi's kunai, causing Kakashi's kunai to tilt outward, making him unbalanced for a moment. It was a small weakness that Shintaro exploited. Shintaro immediately spun his kunai and slashed downward. The sudden attack caught Kakashi off guard. Clang, there was another clang, and Kakashi was forced to retreat. Just now, he had hurriedly used his arm to shield his chest to block the blow. If it weren't for the hard arm guard on his arm, the attack just now would have turned the fight bloody. Rin was very worried and anxiously exclaimed, "Kakashi." Kakashi looked at Rin outside the field, waved his hand to reassure her, then turned to look at Shintaro. "Why aren't you using your full strength?" Shintaro understood very well why the other party asked this. Because he had not used cursed energy from beginning to end. In the first fight with Kakashi, he used cursed energy to defeat him. So Kakashi could clearly understand that Shintaro still had trump card. Shintaro smiled faintly and said, "Ha ha ha, you noticed. Why not use full strength? Because this is a fair fight between ninjas." Kakashi did not understand why Shintaro considered his trump card unfair and not part of ninja skills. But since the other party said this, it meant it wasn't because he looked down on him. Kakashi got this answer and came up with an idea. So he said, "Okay, let's continue." Shintaro said, "Sure." The battle continued. Kakashi threw the kunai in his hand. This time the kunai was fast and accurate, directly aiming at Shintaro's forehead. Shintaro raised his hand to deflect the attack with his kunai, while Kakashi took the opportunity to start forming seals. Kakashi realized that even if Shintaro wasn't using his full strength, he would still have a hard time gaining an advantage in physical skills. However, he believed that taijutsu alone was Shintaro's strength, but ninjutsu was different. In his opinion, when he was studying at the ninja school, his ninjutsu achievements were stronger than Shintaro's. In the first fight against him, he relied on his various ninjutsu to gain the upper hand. Therefore, it was only natural for the fight to reach a stalemate. Kakashi had been promoted to Chunin this year, and his ninjutsu skills have been further improved. Futanden, Kakashi formed seals with his hands and blew a gust of wind from his mouth. The strong wind blew the training ground into flying sand and stones, and most of the spectators around the training ground were mesmerized for a moment. Shintaro raised his hand to cover his face to reduce the impact of the great breakthrough on himself. At the same time, he concentrated chakra on the soles of his feet to prevent himself from being blown away by the strong wind. Kakashi took advantage of the victory and pursued, throwing several secret weapons to seal Shintaro in all directions. The shurikens were extremely powerful under the blessing of the strong wind, and even Shintaro dared not relax at all. He repeatedly swung his kunai, dodging and countering to prevent the kunai from penetrating his body. Kakashi saw that he had the upper hand for the moment and immediately pursued victory. As the effect of the wind gradually weakened, all the secret weapons were blocked by Shintaro. Kakashi had already rushed forward, not prepared to give the opponent a chance to breathe. At this moment, Shintaro quickly formed seals with his hands, and Kakashi watched warily and attacked, but he never expected that this move would lead him into a trap. 24. Storm. Megan. Jibaku Satsu. Kakashi's body was instantly immobilized, and his attack ceased immediately. The spectators were all shocked, but Kurenai understood clearly. The two had studied Jinjutsu together, so she was well aware of Shintaro's Jinjutsu skills. Her father had once remarked that her Jinjutsu talent was very high, not inferior to his own, but he also commented that Shintaro's Jinjutsu talent surpassed both father and daughter. This, Megan, Jibaku Satsu was the best proof of Shintaro's Jinjutsu talent. This Jinjutsu originated from the era of the first Hokage. Its effect made the enemy see an illusion similar to the wood release of the first Hokage, also making them mistakenly believe they were under attack by the first Hokage. Such an effective Jinjutsu was naturally not easy to learn. Kurenai had not learned it yet, but Shintaro could already use it proficiently in actual combat. Kakashi's ninjutsu and taijutsu were very strong, but his jinjutsu was somewhat lacking, which could be considered his current weakness. However, this weakness was also relative, as most of his peers basically had never encountered jinjutsu, while Kakashi had already mastered some basic jinjutsu. However, against Uchiha Shintaro, basic jinjutsu was useless. Shintaro thought he was certain of victory, but at that moment, Kakashi broke free from the Jinjutsu, stepped back several paces, and distanced himself once again. Kakashi turned his head to the side and spat out a mouthful of blood, saying, "As expected, the seniors were right. When fighting the Uchiha, you mustn't look into their eyes. I just didn't expect your Jinjutsu to be this strong now." It turned out he recognized it was Jinjutsu, so he immediately bit his tongue with his teeth and forced himself out of the Jinjutsu, using the pain. Shintaro was greatly surprised by his action and said with great enthusiasm, "I like you, Kakashi." Kakashi replied seriously, "Sorry, I don't like men." He silently complained that Shintaro was indeed a battle maniac. Even Kurenai among the spectators pouted angrily. She never expected that one day Kakashi would become her love rival. Shintaro continued to smile, but quickly formed seals with his hands, using a ninjutsu passed down through his clan. Katan, Geiki no Jutsu. He spat out a large fireball, emitting scorching heat and with a diameter of over 2 meters. This made Obito, who also belonged to the Uchiha clan, feel ashamed. His Katan, Geiki no Jutsu, could only spit out a small flame at the moment. Kakashi dared not relax in the face of this. He swiftly formed seals with his hands, then crouched down and slapped the ground. Doton Dorihiki. A wall of earth as large as the fireball rose from the ground, sufficient to block the attack. It should be noted that the surface of the earth wall was carved with a dog's head. This seemingly trivial detail showed Kakashi's extraordinary chakra control. The fireball hit the earth wall, and the remaining flames swept back along with high-temperature dust, bombarding and filling half the training ground, causing the spectators behind Kakashi to immediately retreat. And Kakashi's figure was perfectly hidden within it. More hidden weapons flew out from the dust, attacking Shintaro from all directions. Shintaro easily raised his hands and blocked these moves flawlessly. Then at that moment, a pair of hands suddenly emerged from the ground beneath him and grabbed his ankles. However, such a sudden move seemed to have been predicted. Shintaro immediately jumped and avoided Doton. Mogurigakure no Jutsu. Kakashi failed to hit the target, but instead made himself passive. However, he had no choice at this moment. The distance between the two was so close, and he missed another move, exposing a significant weakness, so he had no choice but to stand close to Shintaro to gain a chance to win. Even Kakashi didn't have time to pull out his ninja bag, so he could only step forward to fight barehanded, as Shintaro had just landed right in front of him. Shintaro swung his kunai to attack, but Kakashi grabbed his wrist and forced it away. However, Shintaro opened his other hand and struck. Kakashi was about to counter when suddenly a blue spiraling chakra ball condensed in the opponent's hand. Raising Gan, Kakashi had never seen this move before and was shocked, thinking, no hand seals? How is this possible? Just like that, their movements stopped at the same time. Kakashi held Shintaro's hand, standing beside him, while Shintaro held the Rasengan in his hand, stopping in front of Kakashi. Although Kakashi made a move to block, the Iron Arm Protector and the Flesh and Blood body clearly couldn't withstand the attack. I lost, Shintaro replied. Not necessarily. You could take my move by force. At worst, you would lose an arm, and there would still be room to fight. Kakashi smiled bitterly and said, this is just a competition. No need to go all out, right? Shintaro said honestly, every battle should be taken seriously. Kakashi already knew Shintaro's battle fanaticism, shook his head silently, and then asked curiously, what is this move of yours? Shintaro withdrew the Rasengan and said, it's called Rasengan, taught by Namikaze Minato. If you want to learn it, I can teach you, but you have to get Namikaze Minato's approval. Kakashi's eyes lit up, clearly interested in the move that could defeat him, and said, all right, if you like any ninjutsu I know in the future, I will also teach you a move. The two reached an agreement to teach each other ninjutsu. Just like that, the battle between the two Konoha genius ninjas came to an end. Shintaro and Kurenai went home together for dinner, and Kakashi also headed home alone. The outcome of this battle caused a sensation in the village. Many believed that the two young geniuses in Konoha were now truly divided into first and second place. Uchiha Shintaro was the #1 genius in Konoha, and Hatake Kakashi could only rank second. Although Shintaro was still in school and Kakashi had become a chunin, after all, chunin was just a professional title, not a measure of strength. Kakashi had lost to Shintaro twice, so in the villagers' hearts, Kakashi's talent was indeed inferior to Shintaro's. Rin soon comforted Kakashi, and Kakashi expressed his gratitude, but in reality, he didn't feel too lost. He only made a decision in his heart. It seems that after completing missions, training cannot be neglected. Returning home, his father, Hatake Tsukumo, looked at him with a smile as he returned. Lost. Tsukumo clearly knew his son had just gone to fight Shintaro. As a result, it seemed he hadn't heard the rumors circulating in the village, but made his judgment from the beginning. Seeing Kakashi nod, Tsukumo spoke again. Kakashi, you must understand that even if your talent is very high, there are people in this world with higher talent than you, and Uchiha Shintaro is one of them. I heard it only took him a week to learn the ninjutsu Minato developed in 3 years. If you want to become a strong person, both talent and hard work are indispensable. If you neglect your training, let alone Uchiha Shintaro, you might not even be able to defeat that boy named Might Guy in your class in the future. Kakashi only felt his father underestimated him and couldn't beat Uchiha, which he could accept. But he didn't believe he couldn't defeat Guy, who only knew taijutsu. Kakashi silently vowed, I will train hard in the future and become a jonin as soon as possible. I want my father to see my strength. Tsukumo had a very high image in Kakashi's heart and was a hero of Konoha, so he hoped to be recognized by his father. So he began special training with the goal of impressing his father, while also completing missions in the village. This situation lasted for a full year until another storm hit the village. 25. Hatake Tsukumo's suicide. It was an ordinary day in Konoha, year 44. Rumors began circulating in the village, claiming that the White Fang of Konoha, Hatake Tsukumo, a hero as renowned as the Sannin and feared by enemies, had abandoned his mission for the sake of his comrades, resulting in significant losses for the village. This anonymous news spread from nowhere and intensified, creating an unprecedented storm. Many people criticized Tsukumo, saying he was unworthy of being a Konoha hero since he couldn't even complete his mission, and this sentiment even spread to the schools. Both Shintaro and Kurenai heard about it. Kurenai asked, isn't the White Fang truly a hero? Shintaro responded to her doubts. Of course, the White Fang of Konoha is a hero. Can't heroes make mistakes? Kurenai showed a cute expression of realization and said, yes, heroes can make mistakes too. Shintaro added, and whether it's a mistake or not should be seen in detail. People who are deeply hurt by the rumors might not know the truth like we do, and they just slander heroes with a single mouth. As everyone knows, their contributions to Konoha might not even be a fraction of what the White Fang of Konoha has done. Kurenai agreed with this viewpoint and repeated it several times. Both of them thought this was just a village uproar that would soon subside. However, what no one expected was that the storm would not only worsen but also lead to a tragedy. Hitaki Tsukumo committed seppuku at home. This outcome was something Shintaro never anticipated. White Fang is so strong, yet he was so foolish. Why did he let those common people's words affect him to the point of suicide? And are all the top leaders of Konoha idiots? They allowed a village hero to be attacked by villagers. Or is there some hidden agenda behind all this? Shintaro was quite shocked by this, feeling that things were not as simple as they seemed. He then decided to visit Kakashi, the son of the involved party, to inquire about the specific situation. That evening, Shintaro told Kurenai that he wouldn't be home for dinner and went to the Hitaki residence alone. When Tsukumo was still alive, Kakashi had invited him to his home for a meal. So Shintaro knew where the Hitaki residence was. Speaking of that meal, Tsukumo had asked him to look after his useless son in the future. Unexpectedly, his words became a reality as Tsukumo committed suicide. Now Shintaro came to the Hitaki house to look for him, fulfilling Tsukumo's instructions. The Hitaki house was somewhat similar to Shintaro's house. The similarity was that both were very secluded and large houses. When he reached the front door of the Hitaki residence, it was already dark, and Shintaro noticed with his 6 eyes that Kakashi was not home at that moment. Fortunately, he didn't have to wait long before Kakashi returned home carrying 3 fish. Kakashi lifted the fish in his hand and said, "Why are you here? Do you want to stay for dinner? I just caught 3 fish." Shintaro replied, "Okay." The two of them entered the house. Kakashi started to prepare the 3 fish and get ready to cook. At this moment, he said, "You must be here to comfort me, right?" Shintaro generously acknowledged, "I came to see how you're doing now." Kakashi felt the concern from his friend and, after a moment of silence, said, "I really am not used to being alone right now." He shed tears, and the knife in his hand, which was splitting the fish, trembled slightly, but he was strong enough to hold back his sadness. "I have lived like this for 3 years," Shintaro said lightly. Kakashi was stunned for a moment. He didn't know much about the family situation of the boy in front of him who had defeated him twice. Unexpectedly, Shintaro's parents had died, just like his, and this had happened 2 years ago. Shintaro then added, "My mother died a year after giving birth to me, and my father died when I was 5 years old. He entrusted me to the Uchiha Clan before he passed away, and that's why I am where I am today." It was initially very difficult to adapt to living alone. I experienced many inconveniences at home, such as cleaning, washing, and cooking. All of these affected my daily studies and training. But these are the easiest things to adapt to. The hardest thing to adapt to is the psychological dilemma. It's tough living alone. I thought the rest of my life would be like this, but Kurenai's father asked me to have dinner with Kurenai every day and to accompany each other. At first, I didn't think much of it, but over time, I felt that the loneliness in my heart indeed lessened. Now, I am very grateful to Kurenai and her father. Shintaro showed maturity beyond an ordinary person, and his words made Kakashi understand deeply. Kakashi sighed with a bit of envy. "You're indeed lucky to have met Kurenai," Shintaro jokingly said. "Isn't it the same for you? I have Kurenai and you have Rin." Kakashi shook his head slightly. Instead of discussing the topic directly, he changed the subject. He split open the bellies of the 3 fish, removed the internal organs, and washed them under the faucet. He turned to Shintaro and asked, "If you were my father, facing that situation, would you go and save your friend or continue the mission?" Shintaro looked at him and felt that this young man was not as strong as he appeared. His heart was greatly shaken by his father's death. But Shintaro didn't lie to spare Kakashi's emotions. He expressed his inner thoughts in detail. "I think your father was wrong, but the mistake he made was not in saving his friends, but in committing suicide because of the rumors spread by the villagers. Saving your friend might not have been the best choice, but it was your father's choice. In this regard, the choice is no longer about right or wrong. In my opinion, if there's a trade-off between a companion and a mission, I would consider it based on the situation. If the companion is a stranger to me, I would complete the mission first and then try to save them after completing the mission. But if the companion is someone I cherish, like Kurenai, I would abandon the mission and save the companion as soon as possible. It was a quiet night, and Shintaro's words echoed clearly in the house, even reaching outside through the open window. Kakashi was carefully thinking about his words. At this moment, movements outside the window distracted him and drew his attention. "Come out. I'll make more. Let's eat together." Obito scratched his head and stood up from the grass in embarrassment, saying, "I was discovered by you." "Sorry." A gentle woman's voice came from behind Obito. Obito turned around in surprise and then shouted in surprise. Behind him was Rin. "I didn't mean to hide. I just saw Obito and Rin hiding, so I hid too." Another figure emerged from the grass, right next to Rin. Kurenai's small face blushed. It was clear she had heard what Shintaro had just said. Shintaro was not surprised at all by this. In fact, as soon as the three came to the window one after another, he noticed them with his 6 eyes, but he didn't say anything. Just like that night, 4 unexpected guests arrived at the Hitaki residence. 26. Friends, these 4 guests are all classmates. However, the relationship among the 5 of them is somewhat subtle, with Kakashi at the center of this network. On Kakashi's side are Obito and Rin, forming a love triangle among the 3. Although Obito is displeased with Kakashi, he actually cares about him. Otherwise, he wouldn't follow him home from fishing. And he's obsessed with Rin, practically never leaving her side. Rin's affection for Kakashi stems from her childhood admiration for geniuses, similar to Kurenai's early feelings for Shintaro. This mentality has long been established and wouldn't change even if a genius surpassing Kakashi, like Shintaro, appeared. As for Rin, she harbors a faint affection for Obito due to their childhood companionship, a sort of gentle concern for the boy next door. On the other side of Kakashi are Shintaro and Kurenai, and the 3 are connected through Shintaro. Shintaro and Kakashi are both considered geniuses and are close friends who respect each other. Kurenai is Shintaro's childhood friend. After 3 years of being together, Kurenai and Shintaro have become childhood friends, so Kurenai also has a relationship with Kakashi. Kakashi looked at the 4 people and rolled his eyes again, thinking, initially our family was so poor that we had to fish for our own food, but in the end, 4 people came to help. Even though he complained like this, his heart still felt warm. But this house finally isn't so lonely. The corners of his mouth lifted unconsciously behind his mask, and his movements became lighter. Kakashi finished processing the 3 fish, cooked rice again, then lit the gas stove and took out a pan to fry the fish. The bottom of the pan, heated by the faint blue flame of the gas stove, quickly caused the hot oil in the pan to steam. He put the marinated fish into the pan, holding the handle with one hand and cooking with chopsticks in the other. The hot oil in the pan sizzled, and Shintaro and the others were sitting around the tatami. It wasn't that Shintaro and the others didn't help, but Kakashi himself.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.